Segway, the rise and fall of a revolution, the calm story of an invention ahead of its time.
Have you ever wondered how we got here? Not just existing, but moving. Zipping through cities, gliding down sidewalks, feeling the wind on our faces. The story of how we move is the story of humanity itself. It's a tale of dreams, of ingenuity, and of a relentless desire to go just a little bit further, a little bit faster. For thousands of years, our own 2 feet were our only option. The world was vast, and our reach was limited. Then something incredible happened. Someone, somewhere, had a revolutionary idea. They carved a circle from wood, pierced its center, and created the wheel. It's impossible to overstate how much this single invention changed everything. Suddenly, distance wasn't the enemy it once was. We could carry more, travel further, and build civilizations. The wheel didn't just move objects. It moved humanity forward. Fast forward a few thousand years. The world is changing, cities are growing, and the Industrial Revolution is chugging along. The dream of personal, effortless motion was still just that, a dream. Horses were great, but they were expensive and, well, alive. Carriages were clunky. We needed something personal, something for the individual. And then, in the 19th century, another spark of genius. Meet the running machine, or the Laufmaschine. Invented by Carl von Drey in Germany, it was essentially 2 wheels, a seat, and a handlebar. No pedals, no chains. You pushed yourself along with your feet. It looked a bit silly, maybe, but it was the ancestor of something we all recognize today. The bicycle. The bicycle was a game changer. With the addition of pedals and a chain, people could suddenly travel 3 or 4 times faster than walking, using only their own power. It was liberating. For the first time, average people had access to cheap personal transportation. It gave them freedom. The freedom to work further from home, to visit neighboring towns, to simply explore. Bicycles helped shape modern cities and even played a role in social movements, like women's suffrage, by giving women unprecedented independence. The world felt smaller, and the possibilities felt bigger. But we humans are never satisfied, are we? Pedaling is great, but what if we didn't have to pedal at all? The dream of effortless motion persisted. As electricity began to light up our homes and power our factories, inventors started asking, what else can this amazing force do? In 1895, an inventor named Ogden Bolton Jr. filed a patent for a bicycle with an electric motor attached to the rear wheel. The first electric bike was born. At the same time, others were tinkering with putting electric motors on standing platforms with handlebars. You guessed it, the earliest electric scooters were starting to appear. These early models, like the Autobt from the 1910s, were clunky, heavy, and their batteries were terrible. They were more of a novelty for the wealthy than a practical mode of transport. But the seed was planted. The idea of standing on a small platform and gliding effortlessly through the city was no longer just science fiction. For much of the 20th century, these early electric dreams were overshadowed by the roar of the internal combustion engine. The age of the automobile had arrived. Cars were king. They promised ultimate freedom, speed, and status. Our cities were rebuilt around them, with sprawling suburbs and massive highways. The little electric scooter was forgotten, a quirky footnote in the history of transportation. But dreams have a funny way of sticking around. As the 20th century drew to a close, some problems with the age of the car were becoming obvious. Traffic jams, pollution, the stress of finding parking. The dream of the car was, for many, turning into a daily nightmare. This is where our story really begins. The 1990s, a time of technological optimism. The personal computer was taking over, the internet was connecting the world, and a new generation of engineers and dreamers looked at our crowded, car-choked cities and thought, there has to be a better way. They remembered the old dream. The dream of personal, lightweight, electric-powered motion. They weren't just thinking about improving the car or the bicycle. They were imagining something entirely new. They dusted off those century-old ideas of electric scooters and thought, what if we could finally get it right? What if we could use modern technology, better batteries, lighter materials, smarter electronics, to create a device that could truly change how we experience our cities? This was the dawn of a new era in personal mobility. It was a time when a handful of passionate inventors believed they could put the future at our feet. They envisioned a world where you could step out your door and glide silently, effortlessly, to wherever you needed to go. It was a bold, ambitious dream. And it was about to become a reality. The stage was set, the technology was advancing. The need was greater than ever. The 1990s wasn't just the end of a millennium. It was the beginning of a revolution in motion. A revolution that would eventually put millions of us on two wheels, powered by a quiet, electric hum. And it all started with that simple, timeless human dream, the dream of effortless motion. Thank you so much for watching. If you're as fascinated by the history of how we move as I am, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell because in the next chapter, we're going to meet the pioneers who took this dream and turned it into the amazing machines we ride today. See you in the next one. The video opens with a montage of late 90s tech ads, dial-up sounds, and clips of people using bulky computers and early mobile phones. Hello everyone, and welcome back. If you've just joined us, we're taking a journey through the pivotal moments of modern technology. Last time, we explored the foundational years. Today, we're diving headfirst into an era of explosive optimism, a time when the digital world felt like a new frontier, full of endless possibility. This is Chapter 2. A new century of invention. Picture this. It's the late 1990s. The air is buzzing not just with the screech of dial-up modems, but with an intoxicating sense of what's to come. The internet, once a niche tool for academics and geeks, was bursting into the mainstream. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be online. This was the dawn of the dot-com era. It felt like a gold rush, but instead of pickaxes and pans, the tools were keyboards and code. Every day it seemed a new company with a com at the end of its name was launching, promising to revolutionize, well, everything. Shopping, banking, reading, socializing. Venture capitalists were throwing money at ideas scrawled on napkins, and 20-somethings in jeans and hoodies were becoming millionaires overnight on paper, at least. The stock market soared, driven by this feverish belief that the internet would change the fundamental rules of business. Companies like Pets.com, which famously promised to deliver pet food to your door, became household names, symbols of this wild speculative frenzy. The idea was simple: get online, get big, and figure out how to make a profit later. It was a philosophy of move fast and break things before that was even a phrase. And it wasn't just about business, it was about a cultural shift. The internet promised a democratization of information. Suddenly, you could access libraries of knowledge from your desk chair, connect with people on the other side of the planet, and share your own thoughts with a global audience through a personal homepage on GeoCities or AngelFire. The digital divide was real, of course, but the dream was that this technology would ultimately connect and empower everyone. It was a utopian vision painted in pixelated GIFs and powered by a 56K modem. But the excitement wasn't confined to the virtual world. Our physical world was also getting a serious tech upgrade. This was the golden age of the gadget. Do you remember the Palm Pilot? For the first time, you could carry your calendar, contacts, and notes in your pocket. It was a digital brain extension, the precursor to the smartphone, and it felt like pure science fiction. Syncing it with your desktop computer via a cradle was a ritual, a tangible link between your digital life at home and on the go. And the music. The era of the Walkman and bulky CD players was coming to a close. The MP3 format arrived, and with it, the Rio PM-P300, one of the first commercially successful portable digital audio players. The ability to carry hundreds of songs on a device smaller than a deck of cards was mind-blowing. It sparked a revolution in how we consume music, leading to a huge debate about file sharing and digital rights that we're still navigating today. Napster was just around the corner, ready to turn the entire music industry on its head. In our living rooms, the evolution was just as dramatic. The shift from bulky CRT televisions to sleek flat-panel displays began. DVD players were replacing VCRs, offering crystal-clear picture quality and bonus features that made movie nights feel like a premium experience. And in gaming, the leap from 16-bit to 3D graphics with consoles like the PlayStation and Nintendo 64 was monumental. Worlds that were once flat and side-scrolling became immersive, three-dimensional landscapes you could explore. Games like Super Mario 64 and The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time weren't just games. They were experiences that defined a generation. This was also a time of wild experimentation. We saw the rise of the webcam, allowing for grainy, choppy video calls that still felt like a miracle. Digital cameras started to become more affordable, freeing us from the tyranny of film development and letting us see our photos instantly on a tiny LCD screen. Even our phones were getting smarter. Before the iPhone, there were Nokia communicators and feature phones with web browsers, giving us our first clumsy taste of the mobile internet. Remember playing Snake Asterisk? That simple game became a global phenomenon, a shared experience for millions. All of this was fueled by a pervasive narrative that technology was here to solve our problems and build a better future. Magazines like Wired were the Bibles of this new age, filled with predictions of a cyber utopia. Movies like The Matrix captured our collective imagination and anxieties about the blurred lines between the real and digital worlds. The phrase "change everything" wasn't just a marketing slogan, it was a deeply held belief. People genuinely felt they were living on the cusp of a new millennium that would be defined by technological progress. Of course, we now know that this period of unchecked optimism was a bubble, and that bubble was about to burst. The dot-com crash of the early 2000s would bring a brutal reality check, wiping out countless companies and fortunes. The utopian dreams of a perfectly connected world would soon confront the complex realities of privacy, misinformation, and the digital divide. But to dismiss this era as just a period of naive hype would be a mistake. The late 90s laid the groundwork for the world we live in today. The wild ideas, the failed experiments, the sheer creative energy, they were all essential steps. The dream of a computer in every pocket, of instant global communication, of on-demand entertainment. All of those seeds were planted right here, in the fertile, chaotic soil of the turn of the century. This period wasn't just about the technology itself. It was about the shift in mindset. It taught us to expect more, to imagine a world where information was instant, where distance was irrelevant, and where the tools to create and connect were in our own hands. It was an audacious, messy, and exhilarating time to be alive, and its echoes still resonate in every tap, swipe, and click we make today. Thank you so much for joining me on this nostalgic trip back to the dawn of the new millennium. The story, of course, doesn't end here. The crash is coming, but from its ashes, new giants will rise. Join me next time as we explore the fallout and the recovery, where companies like Google and Apple begin to build the modern internet as we know it. If you enjoyed this, please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss the next chapter. See you then. Picture this, it's the year 2000. The dot-com bubble is bursting. But a new kind of buzz is taking over Silicon Valley and beyond. It's not about a website or an app. It's about an invention so secret, so revolutionary, that it's only known by a codename, Ginger. Welcome back to our series. Today we're diving into Chapter 3. The mysterious Project Ginger. This is where the story of the Segway truly begins, not with a public launch, but with a whisper campaign that ignited the world's imagination. The man at the center of it all was Dean Kamen, a brilliant and famously eccentric inventor. Kamen had already made a name for himself with inventions like the first wearable insulin pump and the iBot, a groundbreaking wheelchair that could climb stairs. But what he was working on now was different. It was being developed in total secrecy within the walls of his company, DK Research and Development, in New Hampshire. This project was so confidential that even many employees at DK didn't know its true purpose. They were working on components, systems, and algorithms, but only a select few in Kamen's inner circle knew how all the pieces fit together. The codename Ginger was a playful nod, some say, to Ginger Rogers, who could famously do everything her dance partner Fred Astaire could, but backward and in high heels. The name hinted at a new kind of personal mobility, something graceful, intuitive, and groundbreaking. But secrets in the tech world have a way of getting out, and this one didn't just leak. It exploded. The first real spark came from a book proposal that found its way into the hands of journalists. The proposal, for a book about the invention's creation, made some jaw-dropping claims. It described Ginger as an alternative to the car, a device that would revolutionize transportation and even the very layout of our cities. The hype machine went into overdrive. Speculation ran wild. What could it be? A hydrogen-powered scooter? A personal hovercraft? Anti-gravity boots? The media couldn't get enough of it. Esteemed figures from the tech world, who had been given clandestine previews, added fuel to the fire. Steve Jobs, the legendary co-founder of Apple, was quoted as saying the device was as big a deal as the PC. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, was another early believer. With endorsements like these, the public's imagination went into a frenzy. Think about the pressure. Dean Kamen and his team were trying to perfect a radically new technology, while the entire world was watching, waiting, and guessing. The project was described in almost mythical terms. It was going to solve traffic congestion. It was going to eliminate pollution. It was going to redesign urban landscapes. People envisioned cities with wide-open pedestrian boulevards, where everyone glided effortlessly from place to place on their own personal ginger. The secrecy was intense. To get a sneak peek, you had to sign ironclad non-disclosure agreements. Visitors to Deika were sworn to secrecy. This created an incredible aura of exclusivity and importance around the project. It wasn't just another gadget. It was a glimpse into the future, and only a chosen few were allowed to see it. This period of intense speculation, from roughly late 2000 to late 2001, is a fascinating case study in hype. Without a single picture, without a single concrete detail, ginger became the most talked about invention on the planet. The mystery was its greatest marketing tool. Every news report, every online forum discussion just added another layer to the legend. People weren't just curious. They were invested in the dream. They wanted to believe that a single invention could solve so many of modern life's problems. The rumors painted a picture of a device that was almost magical. It was said to be self-balancing, using a complex system of gyroscopes and sensors to mimic human balance. It would be incredibly intuitive. You just think about moving forward, and it would go. Lean left, and it would turn left. It sounded like something straight out of science fiction, and the most incredible part? It was all true. But the hype also created an impossible standard. How could any real-world device live up to these godlike expectations? The public imagined a perfect solution that would seamlessly integrate into their lives and change the world overnight. They were expecting a revolution on par with the automobile or the personal computer. Inside Deika, the team was facing immense technical challenges. Perfecting the dynamic stabilization technology, the secret sauce that allowed the Segway to balance, was a monumental task. It required sophisticated software, powerful motors, and a deep understanding of human physiology. They were not just building a machine. They were building a partner that could anticipate and respond to a person's slightest movements. Every line of code, every circuit board, every mechanical component had to be perfect. The machine had to be safe, reliable, and most importantly, feel like a natural extension of the body. This was the real work happening behind the curtain of mystery. While the world was dreaming of flying cars and hoverboards, Kamen's team was in the lab, tirelessly engineering the future of personal transport, one gyroscope at a time. The mystery of Project Ginger is a classic tale of innovation and expectation. It shows how a powerful idea, shrouded in secrecy and endorsed by visionaries, can capture the global imagination. It was a masterclass in building anticipation. But it also set the stage for one of the most anticipated and scrutinized product launches in history. The world was holding its breath, waiting for Dean Kamen to finally pull back the curtain and reveal the invention that was supposed to change everything. What would happen when this mythical ginger was finally revealed to the world? Would it live up to the hype? That's what we'll explore in our next chapter. Thanks for watching, and if you're enjoying this deep dive into the story of Segway, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. We'll see you in the next video. Welcome back to our series on the minds that shaped our modern world. Today, we delve into the life of a true visionary, an inventor whose creations have touched millions of lives, often without them even knowing his name. Dean Kamen. This is the story of a man driven by an insatiable curiosity and a profound desire to solve some of humanity's most pressing problems. Our story begins in Long Island, New York, where a young Dean Kamen showed an early aptitude for tinkering and problem-solving. While other kids were playing sports, Dean was in his basement, building complex contraptions. It wasn't just a hobby. It was a calling. He saw problems in the world around him and felt an immediate, innate urge to fix them. This wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about the elegant challenge of finding a solution. His parents, an illustrator for Mad magazine and a teacher, nurtured this curiosity, creating an environment where no idea was too wild and no question was too strange. This foundation of creative freedom would become the bedrock of his entire career. He even started his own business while still in high school, creating and installing light and sound systems for local bands and museums. This early entrepreneurial spirit demonstrated a key aspect of Kamen's character. He wasn't just an inventor. He was a doer, someone who could take an idea from a basement workshop to the real world. While studying at Worcester Polytechnic Institute, a conversation with his older brother, a medical student, would set Kamen on a path that would change the face of modern medicine. His brother spoke of the challenges faced by patients needing round-the-clock intravenous medication, tethered to bulky, imprecise hospital equipment. For Kamen, this wasn't just a medical problem. It was a quality-of-life problem. Why should a person's treatment rob them of their freedom? The question sparked an idea. He dropped out of college not out of disinterest, but because he had found a problem so compelling that he couldn't wait to solve it. In his workshop, he began developing a device that was portable, precise, and could deliver medication automatically. The result was the autosyringe, the world's first wearable infusion pump. This invention was nothing short of revolutionary. It allowed patients, particularly those with diabetes needing constant insulin infusions, to leave the hospital and live normal, active lives. The device was a marvel of engineering, delivering microdoses of medicine with incredible accuracy, something that was previously impossible outside of a clinical setting. For the first time, treatment could be tailored to an individual's lifestyle, rather than the other way around. This wasn't just about managing a disease. It was about restoring dignity and independence. Kamen founded his first medical device company, Autosyringe, Inc., to bring this life-changing technology to the world. He later sold the company, but his mission to use technology to empower people was just getting started. The success of the insulin pump proved his core belief that complex medical challenges could be met with elegant, user-centric engineering solutions. With the success of the autosyringe, Kamen founded a new company, DHA Research and Development Corp., named after his own initials. DHA became his personal innovation hub, a skunk works of brilliant engineers and thinkers, all dedicated to tackling grand challenges. The company's motto is simple yet profound: to invent solutions. One of DEKA's next major projects was born from a similar principle of improving quality of life, the IBOT mobility system. Kamen observed the limitations of traditional wheelchairs. They couldn't climb stairs, navigate rough terrain, or raise a user to eye level with a standing person. He saw this as another unacceptable barrier to freedom and social integration. The IBOT was his answer. This wasn't just a wheelchair. It was a robotic mobility platform. Using a complex system of gyroscopes and sensors, the IBOT could climb curbs and stairs, traverse sand and gravel, and most remarkably, rise up on two wheels, allowing its user to be at eye level, to have a conversation face-to-face. The experience of seeing a user stand up in the IBOT for the first time was deeply moving for everyone involved. It was a moment of regained dignity, a restoration of a basic human interaction that had been lost. While the IBOT was a technological masterpiece, its high cost and complexity made it a commercial challenge. However, its legacy is undeniable. The gyroscopic balancing technology developed for the IBOT would become the seed for Kamen's most famous and perhaps most misunderstood invention. While watching the IBOT balance on two wheels, Kamen and his team had a thought. What if a person without mobility issues could use a similar device for personal transportation? What if you could create a machine that responded to the subtle shifts in your body, an intuitive extension of yourself for getting around? This spark of an idea would lead to a project shrouded in secrecy, codenamed Ginger. The hype around Ginger was unprecedented. Whispers in the tech world suggested it would be bigger than the PC and would revolutionize transportation as we knew it. When it was finally unveiled in 2001, the world met the Segway human transporter. It was a self-balancing, two-wheeled electric vehicle that felt like something out of science fiction. You simply leaned forward to go, leaned back to stop. While it didn't quite remake cities in its image as some had predicted, the Segway was a triumph of dynamic stabilization technology. It found its niche in security patrols, warehouse logistics, and city tours, proving to be an efficient, zero-emission solution for short-distance travel. The Segway demonstrated Kamen's genius for creating intuitive human-machine interfaces, where technology feels less like a tool you operate and more like a natural extension of your own body. It was a testament to his belief that technology should adapt to people, not the other way around. But perhaps Dean Kamen's most enduring legacy won't be a single device, but the generation of innovators he is inspiring. In 1989, concerned by what he saw as a cultural decline in science and technology appreciation among young people, he founded FIRST for inspiration and recognition of science and technology. FIRST is a global robotics competition where high school teams are challenged to build robots to compete in a game that changes every year. But it's so much more than that. Kamen calls it a sport for the mind. It's a program designed to make science, engineering, and technology as exciting and celebrated as any school sport. Students learn teamwork, problem-solving under pressure, and the practical skills of engineering. They work with professional mentors, learning not just how to build a robot, but how to think like an innovator. Through FIRST, Kamen is trying to cultivate the next generation of problem solvers. He believes that the world's biggest challenges, from clean water to sustainable energy, will be solved by these young people. The program has grown exponentially, now involving hundreds of thousands of students from over 100 countries. It's a testament to Kamen's long-term vision. He's not just building machines. He's building a future workforce of creative, capable, and compassionate thinkers. He understands that the ultimate invention is not a gadget, but a culture of innovation itself. Beyond robotics and medical devices, Kamen's passion for solving fundamental human problems has led him to one of the world's most critical challenges: access to clean water. For billions of people, a lack of clean water is a daily crisis. So Kamen and his team at DSEA developed the Slingshot, a water purification system. This compact, energy-efficient device can take virtually any water source, polluted river water, seawater, even raw sewage, and turn it into perfectly pure distilled water, fit for medical use. It's designed to run on very little power, even from a small generator burning cow dung. The goal is to provide a village-scale solution to a global problem. This project perfectly encapsulates Kamen's philosophy: identify a fundamental human need, apply brilliant engineering, and create a robust, practical solution that can work anywhere in the world. It's an invention driven not by profit but by a deep sense of humanitarian responsibility. Dean Kamen lives a life that reflects his inventive spirit. He lives in a unique, hexagon-shaped home in New Hampshire that he designed himself, complete with hidden passages, a helicopter hangar, and a fully equipped machine shop in the center of it all. He flies his own helicopter to work every day. He's a man who has structured his entire existence around the act of creation. He's not defined by the wealth his inventions have brought him, but by the problems he has yet to solve. He remains relentlessly optimistic, a firm believer in the power of technology to improve the human condition. His work reminds us that invention isn't just about creating the next gadget. It's about seeing a human need and having the audacity, the creativity, and the perseverance to meet it. Dean Kamen is more than an inventor. He's a master problem solver, a dedicated humanitarian, and an inspiration for anyone who believes that one good idea can indeed change the world. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the life of Dean Kamen. His story is a powerful reminder of what one dedicated mind can achieve. If you found this story inspiring, please give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Have you ever just stopped and watched someone walk? It sounds a bit weird, right? But think about it. The simple act of walking is an incredible feat of engineering. Our bodies are constantly making tiny subconscious adjustments to keep us upright. We lean forward and our brain tells our legs to step forward to catch us. It's a continuous, controlled fall. This very observation, this simple act of watching people move, was the spark for one of the most talked about inventions of the 21st century. This is the story of how Dean Kamen saw the future of personal mobility in the way we walk. Dean Kamen wasn't your average inventor. By the time this idea struck, he was already a prolific creator. Known for groundbreaking medical devices like the first wearable infusion pump and the IBOT, a revolutionary wheelchair that could climb stairs and stand up on two wheels. It was the IBOT, in fact, that planted the seed for what would become the Segway. While developing the IBOT's complex balancing system, Kamen and his team spent countless hours studying human locomotion. They were fascinated by our innate ability to balance. Imagine this: you're standing still. Your brain is getting constant feedback from your inner ear, your eyes, and the nerves in your muscles and joints. It's processing all this data in real time to keep your center of gravity perfectly balanced over your feet. If you start to lean forward, your brain senses this impending fall and instinctively swings a leg forward to create a new base of support. You don't even think about it. It just happens. Kamen looked at this elegant, efficient system and had a thought, what if a machine could do that? He wasn't thinking about creating a better wheelchair anymore. He was thinking bigger. He envisioned a device that could mimic this fundamental human process. Instead of legs, it would have wheels. Instead of a biological brain, it would have microprocessors. And instead of the inner ear, it would have a sophisticated array of gyroscopes and tilt sensors. The idea was beautifully simple in concept, yet monumentally complex in execution. The machine would sense your lean and, instead of letting you fall, it would move its wheels forward or backward at the precise speed needed to keep you balanced. To move forward, you'd simply lean forward. To stop, you'd stand up straight. It would become an extension of your body, responding to your intent almost before you were consciously aware of it. This was the core concept, the spark that ignited the project codenamed Ginger. Kamen saw a world where cities were designed for people, not cars. He imagined a device that could bridge the gap for those last-mile journeys too long to walk, too short to drive. It would be clean, efficient, and intuitive. It would glide silently through pedestrian spaces, working in harmony with the natural flow of human movement. He wasn't just inventing a new mode of transport. He was trying to reinvent personal mobility itself. The team at Deca, Kamen's research company, got to work. They took the balancing technology from the IBOT, known as dynamic stabilization, and began to refine it for a standing user. The challenge was immense. The system had to be flawless. It needed to react instantly and reliably to the rider's slightest shift in weight. It had to be so intuitive that a first-time user could master it in minutes. They used solid-state gyroscopes, the same kind of technology used in aircraft and missiles, to measure the rider's lean angle hundreds of times per second. Powerful microprocessors would then analyze this data and command the electric motors in each wheel to spin at the exact right speed. Think about the magic of that. The machine isn't just following a command you give it, it's anticipating your movement. It feels you starting to fall and rushes to catch you, over and over again. This constant dance between human and machine, this dynamic partnership, is what makes the Segway feel so unique, almost like it's reading your mind. It's a testament to Kamen's ability to see a complex biological process, deconstruct it to its fundamental principles, and then rebuild it using silicon, metal, and electricity. Of course, the road from that initial spark to a finished product was long and filled with challenges. They had to perfect the software, design the physical platform, ensure its safety and reliability, and all of this was done under a thick veil of secrecy that fueled wild speculation in the media. But it all started with that one simple, powerful observation, the miracle of human balance. Kamen saw the elegance in our everyday movements and dared to ask if technology could not only replicate it, but enhance it. He didn't just see a person walking. He saw the blueprint for a revolution in how we move through the world. It was a vision that would captivate the public and challenge our very notions of transportation. And that, my friends, is how a simple observation about the human body led to one of the most iconic and debated inventions of our time. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most revolutionary ideas are hiding in plain sight in the everyday actions we take for granted. Thank you so much for watching and joining me on this journey into the mind of an inventor. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter in this incredible tale. See you in the next video. Welcome back to our journey through the marvels of modern engineering. Today, we're diving into Chapter 6, Gyroscopes and Magic, the Balancing Act. Ever looked at a Segway and thought, how on earth does that thing stay upright? It almost seems like magic, but the secret lies in a beautiful dance between physics and technology. Let's peel back the layers and discover the science that makes the Segway glide so effortlessly. At the very heart of the Segway's incredible balancing ability is a principle that has fascinated scientists for centuries: the gyroscope. Now, what exactly is a gyroscope? Imagine a spinning top. No matter how you try to tilt its base, the top itself resists that change and tries to stay upright. A gyroscope works on a similar principle called gyroscopic precession. It's essentially a spinning wheel or disc mounted in a way that allows it to tilt freely in any direction. When it's spinning rapidly, it maintains its orientation in space, stubbornly resisting any force that tries to knock it off its axis. The Segway doesn't just have one gyroscope. It has a set of them, often solid-state micro-electromechanical systems, or MEMS gyroscopes. These aren't the big spinning mechanical wheels you might picture. Instead, they are tiny silicon structures that vibrate. When the Segway tilts, the Coriolis effect causes these vibrating structures to shift, and this tiny movement is measured as an electrical signal. This signal tells the Segway's brain exactly how much and how fast it's just tilting. It's an incredibly sensitive system, capable of detecting tilts as small as a fraction of a degree. But the gyroscopes don't work alone. They are part of a sophisticated team of sensors called an inertial measurement unit, or IMU. Alongside the gyroscopes, which measure rotation, the Segway has accelerometers. While gyroscopes tell the Segway it's tilting, accelerometers measure linear motion, how fast it's moving forward or backward. Think of it this way. The gyroscopes are like your inner ear, giving you a sense of balance and orientation. The accelerometers are like the nerves in your feet, telling you if you're moving and in which direction. Together, this sensor fusion provides a complete picture of the Segway's every move, hundreds of times per second. Now, all this information is fed into the Segway's brain, a pair of powerful microprocessors. This is where the real magic happens. The microprocessors run a complex set of algorithms that interpret the data from the gyroscopes and accelerometers. They constantly ask, are we balanced? Are we tilting? If so, which way and how fast? This continuous stream of data allows the computer to know the vehicle's precise orientation at all times. It's essentially mimicking the human brain's own balancing act. When you stand, your brain is constantly making tiny adjustments to your muscles to keep you from falling over, and you don't even have to think about it. The Segway's brain does the same thing, but for the machine. So the brain knows the Segway is tilting forward. What does it do? It sends a command to the motors. The Segway is equipped with two powerful brushless DC electric motors, one for each wheel. When the sensors detect a forward tilt, which happens when you lean forward, the processors tell the motors to spin the wheels forward. The goal is to move the base of the Segway back underneath your center of gravity. It's like when you're about to fall forward, you instinctively take a step to catch yourself. The Segway is essentially taking thousands of tiny steps every second to keep itself perfectly balanced under you. And it's a beautifully intuitive system. When you want to go forward, you simply lean forward. The more you lean, the more the sensors tilt, and the faster the processors tell the motors to spin the wheels to catch up with your lean. To slow down or stop, you lean back. The sensors detect this backward tilt, and the motors slow down or even reverse direction to bring the wheels back under your center of gravity. It's a closed-loop feedback system in constant motion. The rider leans, the sensors detect the lean, the computer processes the information, and the motors react to correct the imbalance. This all happens so quickly and smoothly that it feels like the machine is reading your mind. Turning is just as clever. The Segway's handlebar is called the lean steer frame. When you want to turn left, you gently lean the handlebar to the left. This action is detected by another set of sensors. The computer then instructs the left wheel to slow down slightly and the right wheel to speed up slightly. This difference in wheel speed causes the Segway to pivot, turning you smoothly in the direction you leaned. It's incredibly precise, allowing you to turn on a dime and navigate crowded spaces with ease. The machine becomes an extension of your body, responding to your subtlest movements. So let's recap this elegant ballet of technology. First, you, the rider, shift your weight, creating a change in the center of gravity. Second, the gyroscopic sensors and accelerometers in the IMU instantly detect this tilt and motion. Third, this data is sent to the dual microprocessors, the Segway's brain, which analyze it hundreds of times per second. Fourth, the brain calculates the exact speed and direction the wheels need to move to restore balance. Finally, it sends commands to the electric motors, which adjust the wheel's speed and direction, moving the platform to keep you perfectly upright. It's a continuous high-speed conversation between you, the sensors, the computer, and the motors. It's a system so robust and redundant that it's incredibly safe. The Segway has two of everything: two computers, two sets of sensors, two motors, and two battery packs. If one component were to fail, the other is there to take over, ensuring the rider can come to a safe and controlled stop. This dedication to safety is a key part of the design. The machine is constantly checking its own health, making sure every part of the balancing system is working perfectly. So the next time you see a Segway gliding by, you'll know it's not magic, but something arguably more impressive, a masterful application of science. It is a testament to our ability to understand the laws of physics and create machines that work in perfect harmony with the human body. The balancing act of the Segway is a beautiful example of how gyroscopes, sensors, and intelligent software can come together to create something truly revolutionary. It turned the simple act of standing and moving into a technological marvel. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the science of the Segway. It's amazing what's going on behind the scenes of these seemingly simple machines. If you enjoyed this explanation and want to learn more about the technology that shapes our world, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We have many more chapters to explore together. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. Until then, stay curious. Welcome back to our series. Today, we're diving into Chapter 7, A Revolution in Motion. This is where the theoretical becomes tangible, where blueprints and dreams finally take on physical form. The lab wasn't just a workspace anymore. It was a theater of innovation, and we were all on the edge of our seats. The first prototype, well, it was a beautiful mess. A chaotic assembly of wires, custom machine parts, and a whole lot of hope. We called it Wobblebot for a reason. Its first steps were less of a graceful glide and more of a drunken stagger. It would take a few hesitant shuffles, shudder violently, and then collapse in a heap of metal and disappointment. But here's the thing about those failures, they weren't silent. The lab would erupt. Not with groans, but with laughter. Genuine, belly-aching laughter. We'd replay the video of the fall in slow motion, analyzing every twitch and stumble like it was a championship sports play. Someone would yell, "Look at that leg, it just gave up on life." And we'd all lose it again. Each fall, each comical collapse was a lesson. It was data. We'd gather around the fallen prototype, not with long faces, but with clipboards and calipers, pointing and debating. The weight distribution is off. The actuator torque isn't high enough. Maybe we should adjust the feedback loop gain. The atmosphere was electric. We were a team of detectives solving the most exciting puzzle of our lives. We'd work late into the night, fueled by cold pizza and the sheer thrill of the chase. Sleep was an afterthought. The real world outside the lab faded away. All that mattered was getting Wobblebot back on its feet. Then came the day. It was a Tuesday, I remember that. We'd spent the entire weekend implementing a new stabilization algorithm. The air in the lab was thick with a mixture of exhaustion and anticipation. We powered it on. It whirred to life, the same familiar sound we'd heard 100 times before. It took its first step, then a second, a third. It was walking, a bit clumsy, sure, but it was walking. It wasn't falling. The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. We just stood there, watching, barely breathing as it slowly, deliberately, crossed the entire length of the test area. When it reached the other side and stood there, steady and waiting, the silence was broken by a single whoop, then another. And then the entire lab just exploded into cheers. We were jumping up and down, hugging each other, high-fiving. It was pure, unadulterated joy. It was more than just a machine walking, it was an idea taking its first breath. It was the moment we all knew, deep in our bones, that this wasn't just a cool project anymore. This was going to change everything. We weren't just engineers building a gadget. We were witnesses to the dawn of a new era. We were watching a revolution begin to move, one wobbly, triumphant step at a time. That feeling, that shared moment of realization, is something I'll carry with me forever. It was the spark. From that day forward, the dynamic shifted. The falls became less frequent, the walks longer and more confident. We started calling it Strider instead of Wobblebutt. The name change felt earned. We began pushing its limits, testing it on inclines, uneven surfaces, even giving it a little nudge to see how it would recover its balance. And each time it stayed upright, each time it adapted, our own confidence grew with it. We were no longer just fixing a machine that fell. We were teaching a machine how to walk, how to navigate the world. The laughter didn't stop, but it changed. It was less about the comical failures and more about the delightful surprises. Like the time it sidestepped an obstacle we'd forgotten was there, or when it perfectly mimicked a walking gait we'd programmed just hours before. These were the golden days. We were a small, tight-knit group of people who had poured our souls into this project. And we were seeing the fruits of our labor in real time. There were no press releases, no headlines, no public demos. It was just us, in that lab, sharing a secret with a machine that was learning to dance with gravity. We'd record every test, not just for the data, but to create a family album of sorts. Looking back at those early videos now, you see the raw, unfiltered process of innovation. You see the frustration, the exhaustion, but most of all, you see the joy. You see a group of engineers falling in love with their creation, laughing at its stumbles, and cheering its every success like proud parents. We knew we were standing on the cusp of something extraordinary. The late nights and endless debugging sessions were all worth it for those moments of pure magic. Every time Strider took a step without falling, it was a victory for the entire team. It was a confirmation that our crazy idea wasn't so crazy after all. The laughter that echoed through the lab wasn't just about amusement. It was the sound of discovery, the sound of boundaries being broken, the sound of a revolution finding its feet. And we were right there, front and center, witnessing history in motion. That period cemented our team in a way nothing else could have. Shared struggle and shared triumph have a way of bonding people together. When you've collectively held your breath watching a prototype teeter on the edge of failure, and then collectively erupted in celebration when it succeeds, you build a connection that goes beyond just being colleagues. We knew each other's strengths and weaknesses, not just in engineering but in spirit. We knew who would bring the donuts after a long night, who was the eternal optimist, and who would play the perfect song to lift our spirits. This camaraderie was the secret sauce, the invisible force that powered our innovation as much as any battery or motor. We also learned the importance of play. It might sound counterintuitive in a high-stakes research environment, but making a game out of the testing process kept our morale high. We'd set up obstacle courses, have races between different software versions, and even give out silly homemade awards for the most dramatic fall or the most graceful recovery. This playful approach kept our creativity flowing and prevented burnout. It reminded us that while the goal was serious, the journey could and should be fun. It was in those moments of levity, watching our robots stumble through a makeshift maze, that some of our best ideas were born. As Strider became more and more capable, a new feeling began to settle in alongside the excitement, a sense of responsibility. We were no longer just tinkerers in a lab. We were the custodians of a technology that had the potential to reshape industries, to change lives. The conversation started to shift from "can we make it walk?" to "what will it mean when it can walk everywhere?" We began to discuss the ethical implications, the societal impact. This wasn't just an engineering problem anymore. It was a human one. And that realization, that we were creating something that would exist in the world far beyond the walls of our lab, was both thrilling and profoundly humbling. We were witnessing the birth of something that was greater than the sum of its parts. It was more than just metal and code. It was the physical embodiment of countless hours of human ingenuity, persistence, and teamwork. Every smooth step it took was built upon a mountain of clumsy falls. Every success was a tribute to every failure that came before it. This chapter wasn't just about a machine learning to move. It was about a team of people learning how to create the future, laughing and stumbling right alongside their creation. It was a revolution, not just in technology, but in what we believed was possible. Thank you so much for joining me on this part of the journey. The story is far from over, and the challenges ahead were even greater. If you're enjoying this series, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. We truly appreciate your support. See you next time. Welcome back to our series. Today, we re-diving into one of the most fascinating case studies of hype in modern history, Project Ginger. Before the world knew it as the Segway, it was a mystery that captured the imagination of everyone, from top-tier investors to the average person on the street. It was the year 2000. And whispers began to circulate about a revolutionary invention from the brilliant mind of Dean Kamen. This wasn't just another gadget. It was being touted as something that would fundamentally change how we live and move. The mystery began with a book proposal. A publisher, scrambling to secure the rights to a book about the invention, let slip some incredibly tantalizing details. The proposal claimed this new device was more significant than the internet, and that it would redesign our cities. Tech luminaries like Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos had reportedly seen it and were blown away. Steve Jobs was quoted as saying it could be as big a deal as the PC. Jeff Bezos, Amazon's founder, simply said it was revolutionary. With endorsements like that, how could the world not pay attention? The project's codename, Ginger, leaked to the press, and the speculation machine went into overdrive. The media, with very little concrete information to go on, started guessing. And their guesses were wild. Was it a hoverboard, finally realizing the dream from Back to the Future Part 2? Could it be a personal flying car, something straight out of the Jetsons? Some even speculated it was a new form of clean energy, a teleportation device, or even a perpetual motion machine. The lack of details only fueled the fire. Every tech journalist and news outlet wanted to be the one to break the story. This media frenzy created a feedback loop. The more journalists wrote about the mystery, the more the public became captivated. The more the public talked, the more pressure mounted on Kamen and his team to reveal what Ginger truly was. Online forums and message boards were buzzing. People would dissect every rumor detail, every leaked snippet of information. Was the name Ginger a clue? Did it relate to Ginger Rogers, the famous dancer, implying a new way of moving gracefully? The theories were endless and often outlandish, but they all pointed to one thing. Expectations were reaching an astronomical level. Investors were in a similar state of excitement and confusion. Venture capitalists were lining up, practically begging to pour money into something they hadn't even seen. The promise was just too big to ignore. The fear of missing out on the next big thing was palpable in Silicon Valley and on Wall Street. Kamen, a notoriously private inventor, was hounded by reporters and potential backers. He remained tight-lipped, which, of course, only made the mystery more alluring. He was playing a game of high-stakes poker with the world's attention, and for a while he was winning. The hype wasn't just driven by a lack of information. It was also fueled by the reputation of Dean Kamen himself. This was the man who had already invented the first portable insulin pump in the IBOT, a revolutionary wheelchair that could climb stairs. He was a proven genius, a real-life Tony Stark. If anyone could invent a world-changing device, it was him. His credibility gave weight to even the most fantastical rumors. People believed because they wanted to believe in the power of a single brilliant mind to change the world. This period, the year leading up to the eventual reveal, became a masterclass in marketing, albeit an unintentional one. The secrecy, the high-profile endorsements, and the public's own imagination created a level of anticipation that no advertising campaign could ever buy. It was organic, viral marketing before we even had a common term for it. The story of Project Ginger was no longer just about a new product. It was about hope for a cooler, more advanced future. People weren't just waiting for a device. They were waiting for the future to arrive. But here's the critical question. Can any product, no matter how innovative, ever live up to that level of hype? When people are expecting a flying car and you show them something else, can they ever be truly satisfied? The expectations for Project Ginger were so inflated that they bordered on the impossible. The device would need to not only work flawlessly, but also instantly and visibly reshape society to meet the narrative that had been built around it. It's just a classic tale of a story becoming bigger than the subject it's supposed to be about. As the months ticked by, the pressure cooker environment intensified. Leaks, both real and fake, appeared on websites like Inside.com, which became a hub for Ginger gossip. They published sketches and supposed insider accounts, feeding the public's insatiable appetite for clues. Each new piece of information, whether accurate or not, sent ripples across the tech world and mainstream news. It was a full-blown media spectacle. The narrative was set. Dean Kamen was about to unveil his magnum opus, an invention that would redefine human transportation and urban planning. Finally, the date was set for the big reveal. December 3, 2001, on Good Morning America. The world held its breath. After years of speculation, rumors, and near-mythical hype, IT would finally be shown. Would it fly? Would it levitate? Would it change the world in an instant? The stage was set for one of the most anticipated product launches in history. What happened next would become a lesson for entrepreneurs, marketers, and inventors for decades to come. And that's where we will pick up in the next chapter, the grand reveal of the Segway human transporter and the immediate, complex aftermath of its collision with reality. The story of Project Ginger is a powerful reminder of the double-edged sword of hype. It can build immense interest, but it can also create expectations that are impossible to meet. Thanks so much for watching. If you're enjoying this deep dive, make sure to hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. It's going to be a fascinating conclusion to this story. See you in the next video. December 3rd, 2001, for almost a year, the world had been buzzing about a secret invention, codenamed Ginger, or simply IT. The hype was astronomical. Steve Jobs said it could be as big as the PC. John Doerr, a legendary venture capitalist, predicted it would be bigger than the internet and would be the fastest company in history to reach $1 billion in sales. The media was in a frenzy, speculating about everything from anti-gravity devices to personal jetpacks. What could possibly live up to this level of expectation? On this chilly December morning, the secret was finally out. Millions of people tuned into ABC's Good Morning America, and there it was. Not a flying car, not a teleportation device, but a self-balancing, two-wheeled scooter. Inventor Dean Kamen, looking proud and slightly nervous, rode what the world would now know as the Segway human transporter onto the set in New York's Bryant Park. He glided effortlessly, turning and stopping with subtle shifts in his weight. It was, without a doubt, a marvel of engineering. The hosts, Diane Sawyer and Charles Gibson, looked on with a mixture of fascination and perhaps a little bewilderment. Kamen explained the magic behind it. The Segway used a complex system of gyroscopes and tilt sensors, the same kind of technology used in aerospace to mimic the human sense of balance. To go forward, you lean forward. To stop, you stand straight. To turn, you twist the handlebar. It was intuitive, elegant, and unlike anything anyone had seen before. On the show, they demonstrated its capabilities, navigating around obstacles with ease. Kamen spoke with passion about his vision, a machine that would revolutionize personal transportation, transform how cities were designed, and offer a clean, efficient alternative to short-distance car trips. He envisioned a world where sidewalks were filled with people gliding silently on their Segways, free from traffic jams and pollution. Simultaneously, Time magazine hit the newsstands with a cover story dedicated to the big reveal. The article delved deep into the decade of secret development, the brilliant engineering, and the massive investment that had gone into creating the Segway. It was a journalistic coup, giving the public a detailed look under the hood of this mysterious machine. Both Time and Good Morning America presented the Segway as a serious, groundbreaking invention. They framed it not as a toy, but as a legitimate solution to real-world problems. But as the initial broadcast ended and the magazine was read, a different kind of reaction began to bubble up. The public, primed by months of almost sci-fi level hype, was confused. A scooter? That was IT? The same day, late-night talk show hosts had a field day. Parodies and jokes started immediately. Was it for lazy people? Did you look a little silly riding it? The gap between the monumental hype and the physical reality of a high-tech scooter was just too wide for many people to bridge. The reaction was a perfect storm of awe and anticlimax. On one hand, the technology was undeniably brilliant. Watching someone balance perfectly on two wheels was like seeing a piece of the future arrive early. Engineers and tech enthusiasts were captivated. They understood the complexity and the genius behind the dynamic stabilization. They saw the potential. They were the ones who felt the awe. On the other hand, there was the rest of the world. For the average person, the question wasn't about gyroscopes. It was about practicality. Where would you ride it? On the sidewalk? On the road? Was it safe? And then there was the price tag, $5,000. For that price, you could buy a decent used car. The value proposition was unclear. For all its technological wizardry, it didn't seem to solve a problem that people felt they urgently had. This led to the confusion and ultimately, the ridicule. The company, Segway LLC, had planned this reveal meticulously. They believed that once people saw it, they would get it. But they underestimated the power of the initial narrative. The hype, which had been so beneficial in generating interest, now became a burden. IT was supposed to change the world overnight. But what was unveiled was a product that would need to find its place in a world not yet ready for it. The laws weren't ready, the infrastructure wasn't ready, and public perception was a huge unforeseen obstacle. Looking back, the reveal on December 3rd, 2001 was a pivotal moment. It was a masterclass in technological demonstration but a cautionary tale in managing expectations. Dean Kamen showed the world a machine that could think, a machine that could balance just like a person. But in doing so, he also created an image problem that the Segway would struggle with for years to come. The world saw a feat of engineering, but it also saw an expensive, slightly awkward-looking gadget. The awe was real, but the confusion was more powerful. The big reveal had happened, and the Segway had officially rolled into the public consciousness. But its path forward was suddenly looking a lot more complicated than a smooth glide through the park. The journey was just beginning, and it was going to be an uphill battle. Thanks for watching. We've explored the hype and the creation, and now the reveal. What comes next is the story of how the Segway tried to find its place in the world. If you're enjoying this deep dive, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapter. See you in the next video. Have you ever wondered what our cities would look like if cars weren't the king of the road? What if there was a quieter, cleaner, more elegant way to get around? That's the exact question Dean Kamen and his team were asking themselves. This wasn't just about building a cool new gadget. It was about sparking a revolution in urban design. Welcome back to our deep dive into the story of the Segway. Today, in Chapter 10, we're exploring the promise of a new urban future. Kamen's vision was breathtakingly ambitious. He imagined cities where the constant roar of traffic was replaced by the gentle hum of personal transporters. Picture this: wide flowing boulevards, not choked with cars but filled with people gliding effortlessly on segways. Sidewalks would expand, blurring the lines between pedestrian spaces and transport lanes. The air would be cleaner, the streets safer, and the whole pace of city life would feel more human, more connected. This dream was codenamed Ginger, and for the team working on it, it was more than just an engineering project. It was a crusade. They believed they were creating the personal transportation equivalent of the personal computer, a device that would fundamentally change how we live, work, and play in our urban environments. They weren't just inventing a machine. They were envisioning the blueprint for the city of tomorrow. The core idea was simple but profound. Solve the last mile problem. We have planes, trains, and buses for long distances, but what about those short trips? The dash to the grocery store, the commute from the subway station to the office, the quick trip to meet a friend for coffee. These are the journeys that clog our city centers with cars, create parking nightmares, and pump pollutants into the air we breathe. The Segway was designed to be the perfect solution for this niche. It was faster than walking, more convenient than a bike, and infinitely cleaner than a car. The team ran simulations and created detailed models of these Segway cities. In their vision, downtown cores would become largely car-free zones. Delivery vehicles might be relegated to underground tunnels or specific nighttime hours. In their place, a network of personal mobility pathways would emerge. Imagine leaving your apartment, hopping on your Segway, and gliding silently through a park on your way to work, arriving refreshed and without the stress of rush hour traffic. That was the promise. They talked about the economic benefits, too. Less money spent on fuel, road maintenance, and massive parking structures. More space for green areas, public plazas, and small businesses. The city would become a place for people, not just for vehicles. This wasn't just about convenience. It was about reclaiming our urban landscapes and improving our quality of life. The team saw the Segway as a key that could unlock this potential, making cities more livable, sustainable, and enjoyable for everyone. This vision was incredibly compelling. It attracted brilliant minds and massive investment. The hype surrounding Project Ginger was immense, precisely because it wasn't just selling a product, it was selling a utopian dream. The team truly believed they were on the cusp of changing the world, one city at a time. They imagined police officers patrolling more effectively, mail carriers completing their routes in half the time, and tourists exploring historical sites without fatigue. The applications seemed endless. The architectural implications were also a huge part of the discussion. Buildings might be designed with Segway access and mind-gentle ramps instead of stairs, wider hallways, and dedicated parking spots inside offices. The very fabric of the city would adapt to this new mode of transport. Think of it like the way cities were reshaped around the automobile in the 20th century, but this time the redesign would prioritize people, clean air, and quiet efficiency. This was the grand, beautiful, and incredibly optimistic vision that fueled the final push to bring the Segway to the world. It was a future where technology served humanity in a seamless, elegant way, transforming the concrete jungle into a green, interconnected community. They weren't just launching a scooter. They were launching a movement. The question was, would the world be ready to embrace it? The stage was set for one of the most anticipated product launches in history, built on the promise of a whole new way of life. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the mind of an inventor and the dream of a better future. The story is far from over, and the next chapters will reveal how this grand vision collided with reality. If you're enjoying this series, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. See you in the next video. Imagine this. The year is 2001. The world is buzzing, absolutely electric with anticipation. A mysterious invention, codename Ginger or simply IT, has been teased for months. Top tech visionaries like Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos have seen it and are reportedly blown away. They're saying it's going to be bigger than the PC, that it will revolutionize transportation, that cities will be redesigned around it. The hype is off the charts. People are guessing it's a personal jetpack, a teleportation device, something straight out of science fiction. Then, on December 3, 2001, on Good Morning America, inventor Dean Kamen pulls back the curtain. And there it is, the Segway human transporter. A two-wheeled, self-balancing, electric scooter. It's undeniably cool. Kamen glides around the stage effortlessly, demonstrating its intuitive controls. Lean forward to go, lean back to stop. It looks like magic, a piece of the future delivered to the present. The media goes into a frenzy. This is it. The invention that will change everything. The public is mesmerized. Everyone wants one. The question isn't if you'll get a Segway, but when. But then came the second reveal. The one that wasn't on the morning show. The one that landed with a thud. The price. The first consumer models, available exclusively on Amazon.com, were priced at $5,000. Let that sink in. $5,000 in 2001 money. That's equivalent to over $8,000 today. Suddenly, the dream of gliding to work, of cities filled with silent, graceful transporters, hit a massive pothole. The collective gasp was almost audible. For the average person, the person who had been caught up in the whirlwind of hype, $5,000 was not just a stretch, it was an insurmountable barrier. This wasn't a replacement for a bus pass, this was the price of a decent used car. This wasn't a fun new gadget, it was a major financial investment. The dream of a Segway in every garage evaporated overnight. The conversation shifted from when can I get one to who on earth can afford one. This initial price shock was the first major stumble for the Segway. The company, fueled by its own revolutionary rhetoric, had completely misjudged the market. They had created a product for everyone, but priced it for the 1%. They envisioned their invention as a tool for the masses, a solution to urban congestion and pollution. But at that price point, it was relegated to the status of a luxury toy, a novelty for the wealthy or a specialized tool for niche commercial applications. Think about the context of the time. The early 2000s saw the rise of more affordable, accessible technology. The iPod had just been released at $399, a price many considered steep but still attainable for a revolutionary music device. Personal computers and mobile phones were becoming more powerful and cheaper every year. The market was trending towards democratization of technology, making powerful tools available to more people. The Segway flew directly in the face of this trend. It was an exclusive piece of tech in an era of inclusivity. This created a massive disconnect. The marketing and the hype had painted a picture of a populist revolution, but the price tag told a story of elitism. It was a classic case of overpromising and under-delivering, not on the technology itself, but on its accessibility. The technology was brilliant, but brilliance without access is just a curiosity. So who was actually buying it? The initial wave of customers wasn't the everyday commuters Dean Kamen had envisioned. It was tech enthusiasts with deep pockets, early adopters who wanted the newest, most talked-about gadget regardless of cost. It was also commercial enterprises. Police departments saw them as a great tool for patrolling large areas like parks and airports. Warehouse operations and large industrial campuses bought them to increase employee mobility and efficiency. Tour companies in major cities realized they could create a whole new kind of sightseeing experience. These were all valid, useful applications, but they were a far cry from the grand vision of transforming personal transportation for the entire world. The Segway became a tool for work and a toy for the rich, but it failed to become a vehicle for the people. This limited its visibility. Instead of seeing your neighbor gliding to the corner store, you'd see a security guard at the mall or a group of tourists awkwardly learning to ride in a single file line. This perception mattered. It framed the Segway not as a practical part of everyday life, but as something separate, something for other people. The problem was compounded by the fact that you couldn't just walk into a store and buy one. Initially, they were only available through Amazon. You had to commit $5,000 plus shipping for a product you had never seen in person, never touched, and certainly never ridden. It was a huge leap of faith that most people were simply unwilling to take. There were no showrooms, no test drives, no way to experience the Segway smile that riders supposedly got before dropping a huge amount of cash. This lack of accessibility was a critical error. New transportation technologies require a hands-on experience. You need to feel the intuitive balancing, the smooth acceleration, the unique sensation of gliding. Without that, it's just an abstract concept with a scary price. People needed to be able to try it, to believe in it, and more importantly, to justify opening their wallets for it. The company had spent an estimated $100 million developing the Segway. They had a massive investment to recoup, which partly explains the high price. They were confident that the technology was so revolutionary that people would pay a premium. This is a common pitfall for innovators. They fall in love with their creation and believe its inherent brilliance is enough to guarantee success. But the market is a harsh critic, and price is almost always the most important feature. Dean Kamen and his team had solved an incredible engineering problem. They had created a machine that could balance itself better than a human. But they had failed to solve the economic problem. How do you make this groundbreaking technology affordable and desirable for the average consumer? They had built the car but forgotten to build the roads and, more importantly, forgot to check if people could afford the gas. This is the price of innovation, but not in the way the Segway company intended. The true price wasn't just the sticker on the machine. It was the cost of misreading the public, of letting hype outpace reality, and of creating a barrier between a brilliant invention and the very people it was meant to serve. The initial excitement was real, the potential was immense, but the $5,000 question mark hung over the entire enterprise, casting a long shadow from which the Segway would never fully escape. It was a lesson learned the hard way. You can invent the future, but if no one can afford to live in it, they'll simply stay in the present. The revolution, it turned out, would have to wait. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, please give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter in our deep dive into fascinating product stories. See you in the next one. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our deep dive into the fascinating story of the Segway. In our last chapter, we saw the incredible hype and the ambitious vision behind this revolutionary machine. It was supposed to change how we move, how we live, how we build our cities. But as the first Segways rolled off the production line, they hit a roadblock nobody fully anticipated. It wasn't a technical glitch or a design flaw. It was something much more fundamental: the sidewalk. This is the story of the Segway's legal limbo, where a 21st century invention clashed with 19th century infrastructure and laws. Imagine you've just spent a fortune on what's being called the future of transportation. You step onto your brand new Segway, ready to glide effortlessly through your city. You head for the sidewalk, which seems like its natural habitat. It's faster than walking, but not as fast as a car. But then, a police officer stops you. Why? Because in the eyes of the law, your futuristic personal transporter was a motor vehicle. And motor vehicles, as we all know, don't belong on sidewalks. But wait, if you take it onto the street, you're a slow-moving target surrounded by 2-ton metal boxes. You're too fast for the sidewalk, but dangerously slow for the road. Suddenly, the Segway wasn't just a vehicle. It was a legal paradox. This was the central conflict that defined the Segway's public life. Cities and states across the world were completely unprepared. Their laws were written in a binary world. You were either a pedestrian or you were in a vehicle. There was no in-between. The Segway existed in this gray area, and that's where the trouble began. San Francisco, a city known for its forward-thinking and tech-savvy culture, was one of the first to act. In 2002, they banned Segways from their sidewalks outright. The city's Board of Supervisors cited safety concerns, painting a picture of silent, 80-pound machines zipping through crowds of pedestrians, posing a threat to children, the elderly, and the disabled. It was a massive blow. The very city that seemed like a perfect market for the Segway had slammed the door shut. The media had a field day with it. Headlines portrayed the Segway not as a revolution, but as a menace. This negative perception started to snowball. Other cities and even entire countries began to follow San Francisco's lead. In the UK, the law was even stricter. The Segway was classified as a motor vehicle, which meant it needed to be registered, taxed, and insured to be used on public roads. But it didn't meet the safety standards for a road vehicle, so it couldn't be registered. And since it was a motor vehicle, it was illegal on sidewalks. The result? You could legally own a Segway in Britain, but you could only ride it on private land. It was like owning a boat that you could only use in your bathtub. The core of the problem was our infrastructure. Our cities are designed with a clear separation: roads for cars, sidewalks for people. This system has worked, more or less, for over a century. But the Segway and later e-scooters and e-bikes challenged this fundamental design. They weren't cars, and they weren't just people. They were something new, a category of micromobility that our urban planning hadn't accounted for. The sidewalk, a seemingly simple strip of concrete, became a contested battleground. Pedestrian advocates argued, quite reasonably, that sidewalks are sanctuaries for walking, a safe space away from the speed and danger of traffic. They worried about a slippery slope. If we allow segways, what's next? Will our sidewalks become chaotic miniature highways? Faced with this growing wave of bans, the Segway company had to pivot from being an engineering company to a political lobbying machine. Their mission was no longer just to sell Segways, but to literally carve out a legal space for them to exist. They launched a massive state-by-state campaign in the United States. Their argument was simple: the Segway is not a car. It's an electric personal assistive mobility device, or EPAMD, a term they invented. They argued it was more akin to a motorized wheelchair than a moped. It was designed to operate at walking speeds, and its intuitive controls made it inherently safe. This lobbying effort was surprisingly successful. Within a few years, a majority of U.S. states passed legislation that created a special category for Segways, allowing them on sidewalks, bike paths, and other pedestrian areas, often with some restrictions on speed. It was a huge victory and a testament to the company's persistence. They had effectively rewritten the law in their favor. But the damage, in many ways, was already done. The initial confusion and the negative press had tarnished the Segway's image. The dream of a seamless urban glide was replaced by a reality of checking local ordinances and worrying about where you were and were unallowed to ride. Even in places where they were legal, a cultural problem remained. The Segway just looked odd. It placed the rider a head taller than everyone else, creating a strange, elevated presence that felt out of place on a crowded sidewalk. It didn't blend in. Walkers often felt uneasy with a Segway silently approaching from behind. Unlike a bicycle with its clicking gears or a skateboard with its rolling wheels, the Segway was virtually silent. This social awkwardness was a barrier that no law could fix. It wasn't just about legal acceptance. It was about social acceptance, and the Segway struggled to find it. This chapter of the Segway story is a classic case study in the challenges of disruptive innovation. It shows that a brilliant piece of technology isn't enough. You also have to consider the world it's entering. The infrastructure, the laws, and just as importantly, the social norms. The Segway's fight for the sidewalk wasn't just about legal codes. It was a fight for its very purpose. The company won many of the legal battles, but the struggle left it weakened and its public image bruised. The vision of cities transformed by fleets of silent, gliding commuters never quite materialized. Instead, the Segway found its niche in more controlled environments: police patrols, warehouse logistics, and most famously, city tourism. The Segway tour became an icon, a safe and legal way for people to experience the machine in a carefully managed setting. It was a far cry from the original vision, but it was a place where the Segway could finally exist without being a legal paradox. Thanks so much for watching. The Segway's journey is full of these incredible twists and turns, and we're not done yet. In our next chapter, we'll look at the cultural impact and the moments that sealed its fate in the public imagination. If you're enjoying this series, please hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. See you in the next video. Welcome back to our series on the story of Segway. Last time, we talked about the immense hype and the groundbreaking technology behind Project Ginger. But technology is one thing. How the public actually reacts to it is a completely different story. Today, in Chapter 13, we're diving deep into the public's reaction, a fascinating mix of love, laughter, and utter confusion. After the big reveal on Good Morning America, the Segway Human Transporter, or HT, was finally out in the wild. The initial rollout was slow and deliberate. The first units weren't sold to just anyone. They went to major institutions and corporations, including, believe it or not, the United States Postal Service, the National Park Service, and various police departments across the country. The idea was to showcase the Segway's utility in a professional setting. Imagine a mail carrier gliding effortlessly down a long suburban street, or a park ranger covering vast trails without breaking a sweat. It was a vision of a more efficient future. Police departments were a particularly interesting case study. In cities like Chicago and Philadelphia, officers on Segways became a common sight. Proponents argued it gave officers a height advantage for better visibility in crowds, and it was faster than walking but more approachable than a patrol car. It allowed for quick, quiet navigation through pedestrian areas, parks, and large event venues. Officers could engage more easily with the community while still having a mobility advantage. On paper, it was brilliant. But the reality on the street was mixed. While some officers appreciated the novelty and the ease of getting around, others felt, well, a little silly. The image of a law enforcement officer meant to project authority, perched atop a two-wheeled scooter was, for many, a bit comical. It became an easy target for jokes and late-night TV monologues. You'd see parodies in movies and TV shows, cementing the Segway in the public consciousness not just as a futuristic device, but also as a bit of a punchline. This duality serious tool versus goofy gadget would define the Segway's public perception for years to come. While professionals were testing them out, the public's first real hands-on experience came through a different avenue: tourism. This is where the Segway truly found its first major commercial foothold. Suddenly, Segway tours started popping up in major cities around the world, from Paris to Rome to San Francisco. For a tourist, it was the perfect proposition. You could cover more ground than walking. See the sights up close without being stuck behind the glass of a tour bus, and let's be honest, it was just plain fun. If you've ever seen a Segway tour group, you know the look. A line of helmeted tourists, all slightly wobbly at first, gliding in single file behind a guide. There's a look of intense concentration, followed by a slow-dawning smile of pure joy. That feeling of leaning forward and magically gliding ahead is genuinely cool. For millions of people, this became their one and only interaction with a Segway. It wasn't a personal transportation revolution. It was a fun vacation activity, a novelty experience you did for an hour or two. This created a strange paradox. On one hand, the tours were a massive success for the company. They exposed the technology to a global audience and created a steady revenue stream. On the other hand, it pigeonholed the Segway. It reinforced the idea that it was a toy for tourists, not a serious vehicle for daily commuting. People would see a Segway and think vacation, not the future of urban mobility. The laughter wasn't malicious. It was just the natural reaction to seeing a group of adults looking slightly awkward on these futuristic contraptions. Beyond the organized tours and police patrols, what did the average person think? Curiosity was the dominant reaction. When a Segway glided by on a sidewalk, heads turned. People would stop and stare. The most common questions were always, "What is that thing?" Followed immediately by, "How does it not fall over?" It looked like magic. The self-balancing technology was so seamless that it defied intuition. Early adopters often found themselves acting as impromptu brand ambassadors, constantly stopping to explain how it worked. But this curiosity was often paired with skepticism. The price tag, initially over $5,000, was a huge barrier. For that price, you could buy a decent used car or a high-end electric bike. The question became one of practicality. Where do you ride it? On the sidewalk, you might be going too fast for pedestrians. On the road, you're too slow and vulnerable for cars. Regulations were a messy patchwork, varying from city to city, state to state. This lack of a clear place in the urban infrastructure made it a hard sell as a daily driver. And then there was the social aspect. Riding a Segway made you stand out. While some people love being the center of attention, many others don't. Gliding a foot above everyone else on a quiet, whirring machine felt conspicuous. It lacked the cool factor of a sleek motorcycle or even a classic bicycle. Instead, it was often associated with tech nerds or, thanks to the tours, clueless tourists. The cultural perception was a powerful force that the technology alone couldn't overcome. So you had this incredible spectrum of reactions. There was genuine love from those who found a perfect use for it, like workers in massive warehouses or people with mobility challenges who found a new sense of freedom. There was immense curiosity from everyone who saw it. And yes, there was a healthy dose of laughter and ridicule, fueled by its quirky appearance and its prominent role in pop culture comedies. Ultimately, the public's reaction wasn't a simple yes or no. It was a complex, nuanced conversation about technology, design, social norms, and practicality. The Segway wasn't a failure, but it failed to become the revolutionary force its inventor dreamed it would be. It found its niche not as a replacement for the car, but as a specialized tool and a source of recreational fun. The public didn't reject the Segway. They simply redefined its purpose. The story of the public's reaction is a crucial lesson for any innovator. You can have the most brilliant technology in the world, but you can't dictate how people will feel about it. The public writes the final chapter. Thanks so much for joining me for this part of the journey. What was your first reaction when you saw a Segway? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in our story. We'll see you next time. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're rolling into a story that's part tech history, part cultural phenomenon, and part internet comedy gold. We're talking about the Segway. Remember the hype? This wasn't just a gadget. It was supposed to be the future of personal transportation. Cities would be redesigned. Cars would become obsolete. Steve Jobs himself said it could be as big as the PC. For a brief, shining moment, the Segway was the pinnacle of cool. It was the chariot of the new millennium. In the early 2000s, seeing a Segway was an event. It was futuristic, it was strange, and it was undeniably expensive, which gave it an air of exclusivity. It started popping up in movies and TV shows, not as a prop, but as a symbol. Think about it. In films like Hitch, Will Smith glides around New York City on one, looking effortlessly cool. In Mall Cop, it's the trusty steed of a dedicated, albeit clumsy, security guard. And on Arrested Development, it was the preferred vehicle for the tragically misguided magician, Gob Bluth. Each appearance cemented its status. The Segway wasn't just a product. It was a character in the story of the 21st century, representing everything from sleek urban mobility to quirky, slightly absurd ambition. It was the perfect visual shorthand for a character who was either ahead of the curve or completely out of touch. But here's the thing about culture. It has a wicked sense of humor. The very same things that made the Segway iconic also made it a perfect target for parody. The slightly awkward, upright posture of the rider. The earnest expression required to balance. The sheer novelty of it all. It was just funny. The internet, still in its relatively early days of meme culture, latched on. Suddenly, the Segway wasn't just a symbol of the future. It was a punchline. Viral jokes and Photoshop contests started spreading like wildfire. You'd see historical figures photoshopped onto Segways or world leaders looking goofy as they tried one out for the first time. Remember that photo of President George W. Bush tumbling off one? It became an instant classic, a meme before we even had a solid word for it. It perfectly captured the gap between the Segway's lofty promise and its slightly clumsy reality. The machine that was supposed to revolutionize how we move became the official vehicle of trying too hard. The parodies were relentless and brilliant. Weird Al Yankovic, the king of musical satire, gave us White and Nerdy, a music video where he and his crew proudly roll on Segways, cementing the device's association with a very specific, lovable kind of geek culture. TV shows like South Park dedicated an entire episode to mocking the hype, where the IT device turned out to be a self-balancing machine that caused societal chaos. The Segway had officially crossed the line from being a serious piece of technology to a running joke. The mockery wasn't necessarily mean-spirited. It was more of an affectionate ribbing. The world seemed to collectively decide that while the Segway was a neat idea, it was also inherently ridiculous. This shift from icon to meme holds a fascinating lesson about technology and public perception. The engineers at Segway solved an incredibly complex problem. They created a self-balancing machine that was, by all accounts, a marvel of engineering. They poured millions into research and development. They genuinely believed they were changing the world. But they overlooked one critical factor: the human element. Technology doesn't exist in a vacuum. It lives and dies in the messy, unpredictable world of public opinion, social status, and, well, coolness. The Segway was technically brilliant, but it wasn't cool. It made you look vulnerable, a little silly, standing a foot taller than everyone else, exposed and gliding silently. It didn't have the rugged appeal of a bike or the rebellious spirit of a skateboard. It was the transportation equivalent of a pocket protector. The public didn't reject the technology itself. They rejected the image it projected. It was a solution to a problem most people didn't really have, and it asked them to trade their social grace for a bit of convenience. And that was a trade most people weren't willing to make. So, how does a piece of technology become a meme? It happens when there's a huge gap between its intended purpose and its perceived reality. The Segway was marketed as a revolutionary vehicle for the everyman, a replacement for walking. But in reality, it was adopted by mall cops, city tour groups, and tech executives. This disconnect is prime comedy material. The internet loves to poke fun at things that take themselves too seriously, and the Segway, with its grand pronouncements and utopian vision, was the perfect candidate. It became a symbol of over-engineering and misplaced ambition. Looking back, it's a soft, almost gentle reflection on how we, the public, ultimately shape the destiny of even the most groundbreaking inventions. The engineers can build it, the marketers can sell it, but the culture decides its fate. The Segway wasn't a failure in the traditional sense. It found its niche in security, tourism, and warehouse logistics. It just failed to live up to its own impossible hype. Its legacy is now twofold. It is a genuinely impressive piece of engineering that paved the way for the electric scooters and personal mobility devices we see everywhere today. But it's also a beloved cultural joke, a reminder that sometimes, the future we're promised ends up being a lot funnier and a lot stranger than anyone could have predicted. The story of the Segway is a reminder that innovation isn't just about circuits and code. It's about connecting with people on a human level. You can have the best technology in the world, but if you can't win over hearts, minds, and maybe most importantly, the internet's sense of humor, you might just find yourself rolling from icon to meme. And honestly, in the grand scheme of things, maybe being a beloved meme isn't such a bad legacy to have. It means you made an impact, you made people laugh, and you'll be remembered long after other, more successful gadgets are forgotten. The Segway didn't change the world in the way it intended, but it certainly left its mark. Thanks so much for watching. What are your favorite Segway moments in pop culture? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories from the wild world of tech history. We'll see you in the next one. Welcome back to our series. In the last chapter, we saw Segway struggling to find its footing after a hyped-up launch. Now, in chapter 15, we're diving into a company in motion. This is the story of Segway's fight to break free from its image as a quirky, niche gadget and become a true global player. The initial dream of revolutionizing personal transportation hadn't panned out, but the company wasn't giving up. It was time for a major pivot. The first and most obvious step was to diversify the product line. The original Segway Human Transporter, or HT, was a brilliant piece of engineering, but it was also a one-size-fits-all solution in a world that demanded options. So Segway's engineers got back to the drawing board. This led to the creation of the I-Series and E-Series models. The I-Series was designed to be more rugged, with all-terrain tires perfect for police patrols on varied surfaces or for exploring off-road trails. Think of it as the SUV of the Segway world. On the other hand, the E-Series was the business-focused model, equipped with features like cargo carriers, making it ideal for warehouse logistics, mail delivery, or large corporate campuses. The goal was clear. Instead of trying to sell one product to everyone, they would create specialized products for specific high-value markets. This was a much more targeted and practical approach. But new models alone weren't enough. The world is a big place, and Segway knew it had to go global. The company began a serious push into international markets, particularly in Europe and Asia. This wasn't just about shipping units overseas. It involved navigating a complex web of different regulations, consumer habits, and cultural perceptions. In some European cities, with their narrow, historic streets and growing pedestrian zones, the Segway found a natural home for tourism and municipal services. Imagine gliding through the ancient streets of Rome or Paris on a Segway tour. It was a novel and efficient way to see the sights. In Asia, the focus was often on large-scale commercial and security applications. Each new country was a new challenge, requiring dedicated distribution networks and marketing campaigns tailored to local sensibilities. The international expansion was a slow, grinding process, but it was essential for survival and growth. Parallel to product development and global expansion was a massive effort to reinvent Segway's public image. The company was haunted by the nerdmobile stereotype, the punchline in movies and TV shows. To combat this, Segway launched marketing campaigns that tried to frame the device as cool, practical, and even a little bit sporty. They sponsored events, partnered with celebrities, and tried to generate press that highlighted its use in exciting, dynamic ways. They showcased police officers on Segways pursuing suspects, security teams patrolling major sporting events, and even polo players adapting their sport to the two-wheeled machines. It was an uphill battle against a deeply entrenched public perception. The company was trying to shift the conversation from "what is that weird thing?" to "look at what that amazing tool can do." One of the most interesting new models to emerge during this period was the Segway Centaur. This was a truly wild concept, a four-wheeled vehicle that used the same dynamic stabilization technology. It looked like a futuristic ATV and was designed to handle much rougher terrain while still maintaining that intuitive, lean-to-steer control. The Centaur was a statement piece. It demonstrated that Segway's core technology was incredibly versatile and wasn't just limited to the familiar two-wheeled scooter design. While it never became a mass-market hit, it was a crucial part of the campaign to redefine what the name Segway could mean. It was a symbol of innovation, a signal to the world that the company was still dreaming and still building the future of motion. The company also started looking beyond personal mobility and into robotics. They realized that their self-balancing technology platform had immense potential. This led to collaborations and the development of robotic mobility platforms, or RMPs essentially. These were Segway bases that other companies could build upon to create custom robotic solutions for everything from warehouse automation to research and development. This B2B or business-to-business strategy was a clever move. It allowed Segway to leverage its core technological strength without needing to build an entire consumer-facing product around it. It opened up entirely new revenue streams and positioned Segway as a key technology provider, not just a gadget maker. So let's recap this era of motion. We have new, specialized models like the I-Series and E-Series targeting specific industries. We have a major push into international markets, adapting to new cultures and regulations. We have a relentless marketing effort to make the Segway cool and aspirational. And we have a glimpse into the future with radical concepts like the Centaur and the strategic pivot into robotics with the RMP. Segway was firing on all cylinders, trying everything it could to secure its place in the market. It was a period of intense activity and experimentation. The company was no longer just waiting for the world to catch up to its initial vision. It was actively chasing new opportunities and trying to shape its own destiny. However, despite all these efforts, the fundamental challenge remained. The Segway was still an expensive product in search of a killer application for the average person. While it found success in niche markets like tourism, law enforcement, and warehouse logistics, it never broke through to the mainstream in the way its inventors had hoped. The high price point was a major barrier. For the cost of a Segway, you could buy a decent used car or a high-end electric bicycle. The company was in motion, yes, but was it moving fast enough? Was it moving in the right direction? The struggle was far from over, and the clock was ticking. In our next chapter, we'll see how these efforts paid off or didn't, and how new competitors began to emerge, changing the game once again. Thanks for watching. It's a fascinating story of persistence, and I'm excited to continue it with you. If you're enjoying this deep dive, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next chapter. See you then. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today we're diving into a story that's as tragic as it is ironic, a tale that feels almost like a dark, modern-day fable. It's about a man, a machine, and a twist of fate that sealed the public perception of one of the most hyped inventions of the 21st century. This is the story of Jimmy Hazeldin and the Segway. To truly understand the weight of this story, we need to go back to the year 2000. The world was buzzing with anticipation for a revolutionary invention. Codenamed Ginger, or simply IT tech giants like Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos were reportedly in awe. Jobs even claimed it would be as significant as the PC. The hype was astronomical. People imagined flying cars, personal jetpacks. What could it be? Then, in December 2001, on Good Morning America, inventor Dean Kamen unveiled his creation, the Segway Human Transporter. It was a two-wheeled, self-balancing personal vehicle. You lean forward to go, lean back to stop. It was clever, using advanced gyroscopes and sensors to mimic human balance. Kamen envisioned it revolutionizing how we move through cities, replacing short car trips, reducing pollution, and making urban life more efficient and enjoyable. The initial reaction was a mix of fascination and, well, a little bit of confusion. It was cool, but was it the city-altering revolution we were promised? The Segway was a marvel of engineering, no doubt. But it faced immediate hurdles. Its price tag was a hefty $5,000, putting it out of reach for the average person. Then there were the regulations. Where could you even ride it? Sidewalks? Bike lanes? The street? Cities and states scrambled to classify this new type of vehicle, often banning it from sidewalks for safety reasons. Instead of becoming a tool for the masses, the Segway found its niche in specific markets: police departments, warehouse workers, and most visibly, city tour groups. It became a symbol of tourism, not a revolution in personal transport. Despite the slow adoption, the company pushed forward. Dean Kamen was the brilliant inventor, but by 2009 he was looking for a new owner to steer the company into the future. And that's where our central figure, Jimmy Hazelden, enters the story. Jimmy Hazelden's life was a true rags-to-riches tale. Born in a working-class area of Leeds, England, he left school at 15 and worked as a coal miner. After being laid off during the miners' strikes of the 1980s, he used his redundancy money to start his own business. He invented a unique type of sand-filled, collapsible blast wall called the Hesco Bastion. This invention was a game-changer for military defense, protecting soldiers in conflict zones like Iraq and Afghanistan. It made him incredibly wealthy, with a fortune estimated at over £166 million. But Hazelden wasn't a typical millionaire. He was known for his immense generosity, donating millions to charities, especially those supporting veterans and his local community. He was a down-to-earth philanthropist who never forgot his roots. He was looking for a new challenge, a new venture. And in December 2009, he saw potential where others saw failure. He bought Segway Inc. Hazelden believed in the Segway. He saw its potential not just for urban transport but for mobility for people with disabilities. He was an enthusiast, a hands-on owner who loved to ride the machines himself. He owned a large estate in West Yorkshire, and he would often take his personal Segway out for a spin around the property, exploring the rugged terrain near the river wharf. He was excited about the future of the company under his leadership. He had the vision, the resources, and the personal passion to try and finally make the Segway succeed. The date is September 26, 2010, just 10 months after he bought the company. Jimmy Hazelden, then 62 years old, was doing what he enjoyed, riding a rugged, off-road X2 model of the Segway on his country estate. He was inspecting the grounds, enjoying the outdoors. According to reports, he was near a path overlooking the river wharf. What happened next is a heartbreaking tragedy. It appears that as he was riding near a cliff edge, he somehow lost control. A walker found a Segway at the bottom of the 80-foot drop into the river. A little further on, they found Jimmy Hazelden's body. The coroner's report later suggested that, in a moment of courtesy, he may have been trying to move out of the way for a dog walker on the narrow path, leading to the fatal accident. A simple act of politeness with catastrophic consequences. The news sent shockwaves around the world. The headlines wrote themselves, "Segway boss dies in Segway accident." The irony was stark, cruel, and impossible to ignore. The man who had staked his reputation and fortune on the safety and potential of this machine had died while using it. For the public, this event became the ultimate grim punchline to a long-running joke about the Segway's clumsiness and impracticality. For Segway, the company, it was a devastating blow. They had just gained a passionate, well-funded new owner, and now he was gone in the most public and damaging way imaginable. The accident cemented the Segway's image problem. If the owner himself couldn't safely operate it on his own property, how could the average person trust it on a busy city street? It didn't matter that millions of miles had been ridden safely on Segways or that this was a freak accident on challenging terrain. The story was just too potent. The tragic death of Jimmy Hazelden became a dark turning point from which the brand never fully recovered, at least not in its original form. The company was later sold to a Chinese firm, Ninebot, in 2015, and in 2020, production of the original Segway PT, the iconic two-wheeled chariot, was officially halted for good. The dream of revolutionizing personal transport had ended. Today, the Segway name lives on, mostly on electric scooters and other mobility devices produced by Ninebot. But the original iconic self-balancing transporter is now a relic of a past future, a symbol of unfulfilled promise. And it will forever be linked to the tragic, ironic story of Jimmy Hazelden, the philanthropist and businessman who believed in a dream, only to have it end in the most unbelievable way possible. It's a somber reminder that even with the greatest of intentions and the most brilliant technology, fate can have a cruel sense of humor. Thank you so much for joining us for this story. It's a complex one, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments below. Do you remember the initial hype around the Segway? What do you think was the real reason it never took off? Let's discuss. If you found this video interesting, please give it a like and consider subscribing for more deep dives into fascinating stories from the worlds of tech and business. We'll see you in the next one. Hey everyone, welcome back to our deep dive into the fascinating world of personal mobility. In our last chapter, we left off with the Segway, a revolutionary machine that promised to change cities forever but ultimately fell short of its grand ambitions. Today, in Chapter 17, we're exploring what came next, the rise of new competitors. So the Segway didn't quite become the world-changing invention it was hyped up to be. It was brilliant, yes, but it was also big, heavy, and expensive. For most people, it was a cool novelty, not a practical solution. But here's the thing about great ideas: even if the first version doesn't stick, the core concept often finds a new life, and that's exactly what happened. The vision of a simple, electric personal vehicle didn't die with the Segway's mainstream failure. It was just waiting for the right form. Enter the new kids on the block: hoverboards, electric scooters, and e-bikes. These weren't entirely new inventions, but they were about to get a massive, tech-infused upgrade, borrowing heavily from the spirit of the Segway. Think about it. The Segway introduced the world to the idea of using gyroscopes and electric motors for personal balance and transport. It normalized the sight of people gliding silently down the sidewalk. It planted a seed. The first major wave came around the mid-2010s with the so-called hoverboard. These self-balancing scooters were, in essence, miniature Segways without the handlebar. They used similar gyroscopic technology to keep the rider upright, responding to subtle shifts in body weight to move forward, backward, and turn. But they had one massive advantage over their predecessor. They were small, relatively lightweight, and most importantly, way cheaper. Suddenly, personal electric mobility wasn't a $5,000 investment. It was a few $100. It was a toy, a gadget, something you could get for Christmas. The target market completely shifted. It wasn't about revolutionizing urban infrastructure anymore. It was about fun. Kids, teenagers, and college students were zipping around on these things. They were all over social media, becoming a viral sensation. Of course, they had their own issues. Remember all those stories about them catching fire? Early quality control was a mess, but despite the controversy, they proved one critical point. There was a huge public appetite for small, affordable, electric-powered ways to get around. They took the Segway's core tech and made it accessible. But the hoverboard was just the warm-up act. The real game-changer was the return of an old classic supercharged with new technology. The kick scooter. You know, the kind you had as a kid. Now, add a lithium-ion battery, a quiet hub motor, and a simple throttle, and you have the modern electric scooter. Companies like Bird and Lime saw the potential. They didn't just sell the scooters, they created an entire system around them. Using a smartphone app, you could find a scooter on nearly any street corner, unlock it for $1, and ride it for a few cents a minute. This was the dockless model, and it was brilliant. It solved the last mile problem, that awkward distance between the bus stop and your office, or from the subway to your home. The e-scooter succeeded precisely where the Segway struggled. It wasn't a huge commitment. You didn't have to buy one, store one, or charge one yourself. You just used it when you needed it and left it for the next person. It was incredibly intuitive. If you could ride a regular scooter as a kid, you could ride one of these. There was no learning curve like the Segway's subtle lean-to-go system. Plus, they were less conspicuous. Riding a Segway often made you a spectacle. An e-scooter just blended in. It was practical, affordable on a per-trip basis, and just plain convenient. Cities were suddenly flooded with them, creating a whole new set of challenges for regulation, but proving that the demand for micromobility was undeniable. While scooters took over the sidewalks, another revolution was happening on the bike paths: the electric bicycle or e-bike. The concept is simple. It has a regular bicycle with an integrated electric motor to assist with pedaling. This isn't about replacing the act of cycling, it's about enhancing it. E-bikes solved a lot of the common barriers that stop people from biking. Worried about that giant hill on your commute? The motor gives you a boost. Don't want to show up to work sweaty? You can rely more on the motor and less on your own effort. Need to travel a bit further than you're comfortable with? The e-bike extends your range. Unlike the Segway, which created a whole new category, the e-bike improved upon a form of transport that was already universally understood and accepted. Bicycles have been a part of our urban landscape for over a century. There are already bike lanes, bike racks, and a culture of cycling. E-bikes just made that existing infrastructure and culture accessible to more people, older riders, those with physical limitations, or people who just wanted a little help. They offered the health benefits and freedom of a bike, but with the added convenience of an electric motor. It was the perfect blend of old and new, so what's the common thread here? Why did hoverboards, e-scooters, and e-bikes succeed in capturing the mass market where the Segway couldn't? It all comes down to a few key factors. First, price. They democratized electric mobility, bringing the cost down from thousands to hundreds of dollars, or just a few bucks for a single trip. Second, simplicity and familiarity. Scooters and bikes are familiar forms. There's no intimidation factor. People instantly understand how to use them. The hoverboard, while new, was simple enough to be treated like a fun toy. The Segway, with its unique leaning mechanism and imposing size, always felt like a piece of specialized equipment. Third, a more focused use case. The Segway tried to be everything to everyone: a car replacement, a walking replacement, a tool for police and warehouse workers. The new competitors were more focused. E-scooters nailed the short-distance, on-demand urban trip. E-bikes perfected the longer commute, making cycling more practical. Hoverboards were all about recreation and fun. In the end, the Segway was the visionary prophet, the one who saw the future but was perhaps too early, too complex, and too expensive to bring the masses along. The hoverboards, e-scooters, and e-bikes were the disciples. They took the core gospel of personal electric mobility, simplified it, repackaged it, and made it accessible and appealing to the modern world. They didn't need to change the world all at once. They just needed to change your trip to the corner store, your commute to work, or your ride in the park. And in doing so, they finally started to realize the future that the Segway had promised all those years ago. Thanks so much for watching. This story is a powerful lesson in innovation, that sometimes the most successful product isn't the most revolutionary one, but the one that cleverly builds on a great idea and makes it fit into people's real lives. If you enjoyed this chapter, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you used any of these? What do you think is the future of getting around our cities? See you in the next video. Upbeat, slightly nostalgic music begins and fades into the background. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today we're taking a look back at an invention that was supposed to change the world forever. It was hailed as the future of personal transportation, a device so revolutionary it would redesign our cities. We're talking about the Segway. But if it was so groundbreaking, where did it go? This is the story of Segway's quiet exit. Let's rewind to the turn of the millennium. The year is 2001. The internet is buzzing with rumors about a top-secret invention codenamed Ginger, or IT. Tech luminaries like Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos had seen it and were reportedly blown away. The hype was immense. People speculated it could be anything from a personal jetpack to a cold fusion device. Then, on December 3, 2001, on Good Morning America, inventor Dean Kamen unveiled his creation, the Segway Human Transporter, later renamed the Personal Transporter or PT. It was a two-wheeled, self-balancing electric scooter that used advanced gyroscopes and sensors to mimic human balance. To move forward, you leaned forward. To stop, you straightened up. It was intuitive, elegant, and felt like something straight out of a science fiction movie. Kamen envisioned a future where these devices would replace cars for short-distance travel, easing traffic congestion and reducing pollution. He predicted selling 10,000 units a week within the first year. The media went wild. South Park even dedicated an entire episode to the hype, satirizing how IT would make walking obsolete. The world was ready for a revolution, but the revolution never quite arrived. The first sign of trouble was the price. The second major hurdle was regulation. Cities and states didn't know what to do with it. Was it a pedestrian? A vehicle? Could it be ridden on sidewalks? In the street? The legal ambiguity was a nightmare. Many places outright banned them from sidewalks for safety reasons, fearing collisions with pedestrians. Being forced onto the road with cars, trucks, and buses wasn't a safe or practical option either. The very places it was designed to thrive, dense urban centers, were often the most restrictive. This legislative patchwork quilt severely limited its practical use. Then there was the public perception problem. Let's be honest, despite its cool technology, the Segway never quite managed to look, well, cool. It was often associated with mall cops, city tour groups, and tech geeks. It developed a bit of a dorky reputation. The image of a helmeted adult, standing stock still while gliding a few inches off the ground, became a punchline in movies and TV shows. It lacked the aspirational, cool factor of a sleek bicycle or a classic scooter. For the average person, it just felt a little awkward. Despite these challenges, Segway Inc. pushed forward. They found success in niche markets. Police departments, warehouse operations, private security firms, and tourism companies saw its value. Gliding through a large factory floor or leading a tour group through a historic city center was a perfect use case. For these commercial clients, the cost was justifiable, and the regulatory issues were often easier to navigate on private property or designated routes. The Segway became a familiar sight in tourist hotspots from Paris to San Francisco. But the consumer market, the massive market Dean Kamen had dreamed of conquering, remained elusive. The company tried to adapt. They released different models, including more rugged off-road versions and smaller, more affordable designs. But none of them truly broke through into the mainstream. The fundamental issues of price, regulation, and public image persisted. The company also faced some unfortunate public relations incidents. In 2003, President George W. Bush famously took a tumble off a Segway at his family's estate, a moment that was captured and replayed endlessly. While he was unharmed, the image of a world leader falling off the intuitive device didn't exactly inspire confidence. Then, in a truly tragic and ironic turn of events, the man who bought the Segway company in 2009, British millionaire Jimmy Hiselden, died in 2010. He accidentally drove a Segway off a cliff near his home. While it was a terrible accident, the headlines wrote themselves and created another dark cloud over the brand's perception. As the years went on, the world of personal mobility began to change, but not in the way Segway had anticipated. The 2010s saw the rise of electric bikes, ride-sharing services like Uber and Lyft, and most importantly, the electric kick scooter. Companies like Bird and Lime flooded city streets with cheap, accessible, dockless e-scooters that could be rented for a few dollars via a smartphone app. These e-scooters did what the Segway couldn't. They were affordable, lightweight, and far less conspicuous. While they faced their own regulatory battles, their sheer numbers and convenience made them an undeniable part of the urban landscape. They were the cheap, easy, and good enough solution that the market wanted. The Segway, with its high price and bulky design, suddenly looked like a relic from a different era. By the late 2010s, the writing was on the wall. The personal transporter, the flagship product, accounted for less than 1.5% of the company's revenue. The company, which had been acquired by the Chinese robotics firm Ninebot in 2015, was now making most of its money from the very e-scooters that had made its original invention obsolete. It was a classic case of market disruption. Finally, on June 23, 2020, the announcement came. Ninebot would cease production of the original Segway PT. After nearly 2 decades, the journey was over. The news barely made a ripple. In a world preoccupied with a global pandemic and a rapidly changing news cycle, the end of the Segway was met with a collective shrug and a few nostalgic "I remember those" comments on social media. There were no grand farewells, no tearful eulogies. The invention that was launched with a tidal wave of hype quietly faded away. So, what is the legacy of the Segway? Was it a failure in terms of its original grand ambitions? Yes. It failed to change the world, redesign cities, or replace the car. It was a classic example of a technology in search of a problem. A brilliant piece of engineering that didn't quite fit the realities of the market or human culture. But in another sense, it wasn't a total failure. The technology behind the Segway was genuinely groundbreaking. Its self-balancing systems laid the groundwork for countless other devices, from the so-called hoverboards that became a brief fad to the e-scooters that now dominate the micromobility market. In fact, the company that acquired Segway, Ninebot, is a global leader in e-scooters. So in a way, the Segway's DNA lives on in its more successful descendants. The story of the Segway PT is a powerful lesson in innovation. It teaches us that brilliant technology isn't enough. For a product to succeed, it needs to be affordable, practical, culturally acceptable, and it has to navigate the messy realities of law and infrastructure. The Segway promised us a seamless future, but it stumbled on the simple, everyday obstacles of price tags, public perception, and potholes in the pavement. It was an icon of its time, a symbol of turn-of-the-century technological optimism. And while you may not see them gliding down your street anymore, the Segway PT remains a fascinating chapter in the history of transportation, a dream of the future that just couldn't quite keep its balance in the present. Thanks so much for watching. What are your memories of the Segway? Did you ever get to ride one? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this look back at tech history, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more stories like this. We'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome back to our series. In this final chapter, the legacy lives on. We're exploring how the spirit and technology of the Segway, despite its own commercial ups and downs, have fundamentally reshaped the world of personal mobility. The original Segway may have faded from the spotlight, but its core innovation, dynamic stabilization, is more alive today than ever before. It's like the grandparent of a whole new generation of gadgets that are zipping around our cities and warehouses. Think about it. When you see someone effortlessly gliding on a hoverboard, what you're really seeing is Segway's DNA at work. Those self-balancing scooters, which became a global phenomenon, directly inherited their balancing magic from Dean Kamen's invention. They took the complex, sophisticated gyroscope and accelerometer system, miniaturized it, and made it accessible and affordable for millions. It was the Segway's concept, repackaged for fun and everyday convenience. The dream of intuitive electric personal transport didn't die. It just changed its form factor. And it's not just about personal fun. The legacy extends into the booming world of logistics and automation. Have you seen those little delivery robots navigating sidewalks to bring someone their lunch or groceries? Many of them use the very same self-balancing principles to stay upright, navigate bumps, and safely move among pedestrians. These robots from companies like Starship Technologies are essentially autonomous two-wheeled couriers. They are the direct descendants of the Segway, fulfilling a futuristic vision of efficient, last-mile delivery that the original machine hinted at. It's the Segway's brain, repurposed for a world of e-commerce. The influence doesn't stop there. Look at the explosion of electric unicycles, or EUCs. These single-wheeled marvels require an even more sophisticated sense of balance, all managed by internal gyroscopes and processors that make constant, tiny adjustments to keep the rider upright. It's the purest form of dynamic stabilization. Riders lean forward to accelerate and lean back to brake, exactly like on a Segway, but with an even greater sense of freedom and connection to the device. These aren't just niche toys anymore. They're becoming legitimate commuting tools for urban adventurers who crave portability and agility. Even in the world of robotics beyond delivery, Segway's technology is a foundational element. Research labs and tech companies are building advanced robotic platforms that need to balance and move with human-like grace. Whether it's a robot designed to assist in a warehouse or a telepresence robot that allows you to virtually be somewhere else, the ability to balance on two wheels provides incredible maneuverability in human-centric environments. It's a more efficient and elegant solution than clunky treads or four-wheel designs for many indoor applications. The Segway proved that balancing on two wheels was not just possible, but practical. And let's not forget the company's Segway itself, which evolved and is now a major player under the ownership of Ninebot. They produce a huge range of personal electric vehicles, from kick scooters that dominate city rental fleets to advanced go-karts and new self-balancing models. The name Segway is now synonymous with the broader category of personal electric mobility. It successfully transitioned from a single iconic product to a brand that represents an entire movement. They took the original vision and diversified it, proving that the initial idea was powerful enough to spawn an entire ecosystem of products. What's truly fascinating is how this technology has become democratized. What was once a $5,000 piece of high-tech wizardry is now integrated into products, costing just a few $100s. This accessibility has sparked creativity and innovation from countless engineers and entrepreneurs around the world. They've taken the core concept and applied it in ways Dean Kamen himself might never have imagined. From personal mobility aids for those with walking difficulties to high-performance racing unicycles, the applications continue to multiply. The Segway's journey is a powerful lesson in innovation. It teaches us that a revolutionary idea doesn't always succeed in its original form. Sometimes its true impact is measured by the seeds it plants and the future it inspires. The Segway was a catalyst. It introduced the world to the concept of dynamically stabilized movement and challenged our perceptions of what personal transportation could be. It normalized the sight of people gliding effortlessly on electric devices, paving the way for the electric scooter and e-bike revolutions we see today. So, while you may not see many classic Segways on the street anymore, its ghost, its technological soul, is everywhere. It's in the joyful glide of a hoverboard, the quiet efficiency of a delivery bot, the thrilling ride of an electric unicycle, and the foundational technology of countless robotic systems. The Segway didn't fail. It simply evolved and multiplied. Its legacy isn't a museum piece. It's a living, breathing part of our modern technological landscape, constantly moving, balancing, and carrying us into the future. Thank you so much for joining me on this entire journey. It's been incredible exploring the story of this iconic invention with all of you. If you enjoyed this series, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss what we have coming up next. We'd love to have you with us. Thanks for watching. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we read diving into one of the most fascinating and cautionary tales in modern business history. The story of the Segway. Remember the hype? This two-wheeled, self-balancing personal transporter was supposed to revolutionize how we move, how we live, and how our cities are designed. It was hailed as the next big thing, maybe even more significant than the PC. So what happened? Why aren't we all gliding around on Segways today? This is the story of how a groundbreaking innovation can still fall short, and the powerful lessons it teaches us about what it truly takes to succeed. Before its grand reveal in 2001, the Segway was shrouded in secrecy. It was codenamed Ginger and IT. Steve Jobs famously said it was as big a deal as the PC. Jeff Bezos was an early investor. The buzz was incredible. The inventor, Dean Kamen, was a genius, a modern-day Edison with a track record of creating life-changing medical devices. So, when he turned his attention to personal transportation, the world held its breath, expecting a miracle. And in many ways, the technology was miraculous. The Segway used a complex system of gyroscopes and sensors to balance perfectly, responding almost intuitively to the rider's movements. It was a marvel of engineering, a piece of the future delivered to our doorstep. The unveiling happened on Good Morning America, and it was a media spectacle. Dean Kamen, writing his creation, looked like a man who had just changed the world. The initial reviews of the technology were glowing. It was fun, it was futuristic, it was really cool. The company predicted they'd be selling 10,000 units a week within the first year. They built a massive factory in New Hampshire, ready to pump out Segways for the masses who would surely be clamoring for them. But the clamor never came. The sales numbers were a tiny fraction of the projections. The revolution stalled before it even began. And this is where our real story starts. The Segway didn't fail because it was a bad product. It failed because a great product isn't enough. The first major hurdle was the price. The initial models cost around $5,000. Let's put that in perspective. In the early 2000s, that was a huge amount of money. You could buy a decent used car for that price. The Segway was positioned as a solution for the last mile problem, the distance from a public transit stop to your final destination. But who's going to spend $5,000 to solve a problem that could be solved with a brisk walk, a cheap bicycle, or a scooter? The target market was fuzzy. Was it for commuters, for police officers, for warehouse workers? By trying to be for everyone, it ended up feeling like it was for no one in particular, especially at that premium price point. Affordability is a gatekeeper to mass adoption, and the Segway was locked on the wrong side of the gate. Then came the cultural and practical roadblocks. The Segway existed in a legal gray area. Was it a pedestrian device or a vehicle? Could you ride it on the sidewalk? In the bike lane? On the road? Cities and states scrambled to create regulations, and many simply banned them from sidewalks for safety reasons. Imagine buying a revolutionary new form of transport only to be told you can't use it where you need it most. It was a logistical nightmare. Furthermore, there was the cool factor, or rather, the lack of it. While the technology was cool, the image of riding a Segway wasn't. It quickly became associated with tourists in helmets or mall cops. It looked a bit dorky, a bit awkward. It never achieved the effortless cool of a skateboard or the rugged practicality of a bike. Culture and perception are incredibly powerful forces, and the Segway just couldn't win the hearts and minds of the public. Another critical lesson is about infrastructure. Our cities are built for cars and pedestrians. The Segway didn't fit neatly into either category. There were no Segway lanes. There was no place to park or lock it up securely outside a coffee shop. It was too heavy to carry up a flight of stairs to your apartment. A truly revolutionary product often requires a corresponding revolution in infrastructure and habits. The automobile succeeded not just because the car was a great invention, but because we built an entire ecosystem around it. Roads, gas stations, traffic laws, and suburbs. The Segway asked people to change their lives for it, without the world changing to accommodate it. It was a product without a home. Think about the timing. The Segway was launched into a post-9/11 world where economic uncertainty was high. People were tightening their belts, and the $5,000 luxury toy was a tough sell, but more than that, the timing was off technologically. A decade or so later, the world would be very different. The rise of smartphones, GPS, and the sharing economy created the perfect storm for a new wave of micro-mobility. This is why we see electric scooters from companies like Lime and Bird being successful today. The technology is similar, but the context is completely different. These scooters are cheaper, accessible via an app, and dockless, solving the infrastructure problem. They arrived at a time when people were culturally ready for them. The Segway was simply too early. It was a prophet that nobody was ready to listen to. So, what's the ultimate takeaway from the Segway saga? It's a powerful reminder that innovation is just one piece of a very large puzzle. You can have the most brilliant technology in the world, but if you get the pricing wrong, misunderstand the culture, ignore the infrastructure, and mistime the launch, you're destined to struggle. Success requires a holistic approach. It's about fitting your product into the real world, into people's real lives, their budgets, and their cities. The Segway wasn't a failure of engineering. It was a failure of imagination about the human and social factors that govern success. It teaches us that to change the world, you have to understand the world first. The Segway will forever be a fascinating what if, a ghost of a future that never was, and a lesson that every innovator, entrepreneur, and dreamer should take to heart. Thanks so much for watching. What do you think? Was the Segway just ahead of its time, or was it a flawed concept from the start? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the intersection of business, technology, and culture. See you in the next one. So we've reached the end of our journey, the final chapter in the incredible story of the Segway. It's easy to look at the end of its production and call it a failure, a quirky footnote in the history of technology. But that's not the whole story, is it? To do that would be to miss the point entirely. The Segway wasn't just a product. It was a promise. A bold, audacious dream of a different kind of future. Think about it. Before the Segway rolled onto the scene, what did personal mobility look like? It was cars, buses, bikes, all familiar, all conventional. Then Dean Kamen and his team dared to ask, what if we could move in a way that felt as natural as walking, but with the ease of a machine? They envisioned cities where we could glide effortlessly, silently, from one place to another, leaving a smaller, greener footprint. It was a vision of a world less congested, less polluted, and more connected on a human scale. This was the dream of the Segway: smoother, greener, effortless motion. It was about reclaiming our cities and our short-distance journeys from the tyranny of the automobile. The Segway itself, with its gyroscopes and intuitive controls, was just the first bold expression of that dream. It was a physical manifestation of a revolutionary idea. And while the two-wheeled, self-balancing transporter may not have replaced the car as its inventor had hoped, the dream it embodied certainly didn't die with it. In fact, it's more alive today than ever before. Look around you. That dream, that spark of ingenuity, has been scattered like seeds in the wind, and it has taken root in the most fascinating ways. Every time you see someone zip by on an electric scooter, you're seeing a piece of the Segway's legacy. Those e-scooters that have become so common in cities all over the world? Their very existence is a testament to the trail the Segway blazed. They share the same core DNA: compact, electric, Personal mobility designed for the last mile. They took the Segway's high-concept idea and adapted it, making it more accessible, more portable, and more affordable for the masses. And it doesn't stop there. Think about the explosion of personal electric vehicles. We have electric skateboards that let you carve up the pavement like a surfer on concrete waves. We have one-wheeled marvels that seem to defy gravity, their riders balancing with a skill that echoes the magic of the first Segway riders. We have electric bikes that give us a gentle push up steep hills, making cycling a viable option for more people than ever before. All of these innovations are children of the same revolution. They are all chasing that same dream of effortless, green, personal freedom. The Segway forced us to rethink what was possible. It challenged the status quo and opened a Pandora's box of creativity. Engineers and designers who grew up seeing the Segway on TV, who read about its secret invention, were inspired. They saw the potential, but they also saw the limitations. And so they started to tinker, to iterate, to dream their own versions of the future of motion. They asked, how can we make it lighter, cheaper, more intuitive, more fun? The spirit of the Segway lives on in the garages of inventors and the labs of startups around the globe. It's in the complex algorithms that balance a hoverboard. It's in the lightweight battery technology that powers an e-bike for miles and miles. It's in the shared mobility apps on our phones that allow us to pick up and drop off a scooter with a simple tap. The Segway was the pioneer, the one that took the arrows in its back, clearing a path for everyone who followed. It normalized the idea of standing on a platform and just going. Even beyond the hardware, the Segway's influence is cultural. It planted a powerful idea in our collective consciousness, the idea that our cities could be designed for people, not just for cars. It helped fuel the conversation about sustainable urban transport and the need for alternatives to fossil fuels. It was a catalyst, a conversation starter that, 20 years later, is now a global movement. We are all living in the world that the Segway helped to imagine. So as we close this chapter, let's not remember the Segway for its unfulfilled prophecies or its spectacular, hyped-up debut. Let's not remember it as a punchline. Instead, let's see it for what it truly was, a gentle prologue to a much larger story. A story that is still being written today by countless engineers, dreamers, and everyday commuters. The machine may be gone, but the dream rolls on. It glides silently through our city streets. It hums in the electric motors of 1,000 different devices. And it continues to inspire us to find better, smarter, and more joyful ways to move through the world. The Segway didn't fail. It just passed the torch. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the history of one of technology's most fascinating stories. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more explorations into the tech that shapes our world. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, stay curious,